Chapter 1525. The door of adversity trembled slightly. Within the door of adversity, countless bolts of blood-colored lightning flashed and tore. It was obvious that it was enraged. Damn it, it had never been bullied like this before. Yi Xian could sense the door of adversity's anger, but he did not care. He patted the door of adversity lightly and transmitted his voice using celestial qi. I'll give you 3 breaths. If you don't break this blood formation in 3 breaths, I'll call my big brother. I'll immediately call my big brother to come and kill it. 1. The door of adversity did not respond. 2. The door of adversity still did not respond. Yi Xian opened his palm, and a ray of sword light appeared in his hand. Just as he was about to call for help, the door of adversity suddenly floated in front of the woman, and it smashed into the blood circle. Boom! In an instant, the blood circle shook violently and then collapsed. However, countless blood-colored runes appeared and surged into the blood sword above the woman's head. The blood sword shook violently and in an instant, the entire sky above Burial Mountain turned into a sea of blood. The sword stood in the sea of blood and the sea of blood around it surged. It was as if doomsday had arrived. It was extremely frightening. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression became solemn. The power contained within the sword made his heart palpitate. However, was this sword going to go against the door of adversity? At this moment, the sword suddenly fell from the sky and slashed at the door of adversity. Seeing this, Yi Xian blinked. Good Lord, this sword was really going to destroy the door of adversity. It had guts. Below, the door of adversity suddenly trembled. It was angry. It was one thing to be bullied by that swordsman. After all, they really could not win. However, what kind of trash was this broken sword? How dare it bully it? The door of adversity suddenly turned into a ray of blood light and shot into the sky. It directly collided with the blood sword. Boom! The blood sword directly exploded and turned into nothingness. At the same time, the sea of blood in the sky disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, the woman slowly clenched her right hand. Her heart was filled with a deep fear. Yi Xian glanced at the door of adversity. This door of adversity was really fierce. Apart from the 3 swords, there was probably no one who could match up to him. Even if Nian Nian and Tu joined forces, they still couldn't resist the calamity it emitted. Unfortunately, this guy was unlucky to meet that swordsman. Meanwhile, the door of misfortune suddenly returned to Yi Xian's body. Naturally, it did not dare to leave. Because the swordsman was not far away, and there were 2 sword auras within its body. It was afraid that if it ran, it would lose its life immediately. All it could do now was wait for the swordsman to leave. Now, it could only lay low. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly said, "Thank you." Yi Xian looked at the woman. "How should I address you, miss?" The woman said, "Pull the gentleman. Save the husband." Yi Xian nodded. "Miss Wan Jun, can we start now?" Lu Jun said, "Wait a moment. Let me recover." As she spoke, she sat cross-legged on the ground and started to heal her injuries. Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and some violet energy surged towards Pull the gentleman. Pull the gentleman was slightly surprised when she saw the violet energy, and she said, "This violet energy is too precious. However, since it's a token of goodwill, I won't hold back." "Thank you." As she spoke, she directly absorbed the violet energy. Yi Xian was speechless. "I've met my match." A short while later, Pull the gentleman had more or less recovered. She stood up and suddenly clenched her fists tightly. In an instant, the chains in her hands collapsed. Pull the gentleman took a deep breath, and then she slowly closed her eyes. After a very long time, she opened her eyes again. Her eye sockets were still pitch black, and they looked extremely horrifying. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Miss Pull the gentleman, can't you reconstruct your eyes?" Pull the gentleman's expression suddenly became ferocious. My eyes are in the hands of the Tian family, and I'm going to take them back with my own 2 hands. Yi Xian glanced at Pull the gentleman. He knew that Pull the gentleman definitely had a blood feud with him. However, that wasn't something that he wanted to care about. Right now, he only wanted to break through his limits. Pull the gentleman suddenly turned to Yi Xian. Are you ready? Yi Xian said in a low voice, I'm ready. He hadn't even finished speaking when Pull the gentleman suddenly attacked. She moved like lightning, and her finger touched the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Yi Xian hadn't expected Pull the gentleman to attack so suddenly. He was caught off guard, and he was horrified. It was too late to dodge, but he could only forcefully dodge. However, it was still a little too late. Pull the gentleman's finger touched the space between his eyebrows. Boom! In an instant, Yi Xian's body collapsed, and his soul retreated hundreds of kilometers. In the process, his soul started to burn. At this moment, the soul-suppressing sword suddenly transformed into a sword light and fused with his soul. Boom! Yi Xian's burning soul immediately calmed down. After he stopped, Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly, and his mind went blank. If it wasn't for the soul-suppressing sword, he would have been instantly killed. Pull the gentleman appeared in front of Yi Xian. Do you understand what it means to be between life and death? Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Between life and death. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. That moment just now was the closest he'd ever been to death in his life, and at that moment, he was afraid. Afraid of death. In this world, how many people could be unafraid of death? Originally, he thought that he wasn't afraid of death, but in reality, he still felt fear in his heart when he really faced death. Yi Xian laughed at himself. To think that he had asked for death. Wanted to die? A person who was afraid of death actually wanted to die. Now that he thought about it, it was really ridiculous. Pull the gentleman didn't say anything else. She knew that Yi Xian must have a lot of thoughts going through his mind right now. The feeling of being between life and death far surpassed any kind of bitter cultivation. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly sat cross-legged on the ground and began to reconstruct his body. This time, he used his violet energy to reconstruct his body because it was faster. Around 2 hours later, Yi Xian's body had recovered. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled as he gazed at his reconstructed body. His current body was too fragile. Meanwhile, Pull the gentleman suddenly said, Shall we continue? Yi Xian was about to nod when Pull the gentleman suddenly attacked. This time, it was even faster than before. Fortunately, Yi Xian was mentally prepared this time, so he'd already retreated the moment Pull the gentleman attacked. However, Pull the gentleman's finger pierced through space and tapped the center of his forehead. Bang! Yi Xian's body collapsed once more, and his soul retreated explosively. This time, he retreated for over 30 kilometers. Moreover, his soul had become extremely illusory as if it would vanish at any moment. Actually, if it wasn't for the soul-quelling sword, his soul really would have vanished. Pull the gentleman walked towards Yi Xian. You can't do it more than 3 times. If you do it again, that sword won't be able to protect your soul. She stopped as she spoke. Do you dare to continue? Do I dare to continue? These words struck the heart. Yi Xian took a deep breath. Come. He sat down cross-legged on the ground and continued to reconstruct his body. Pull the gentleman stood on the spot in silence. 2 hours later, Yi Xian's body had recovered. Yi Xian stood up and looked at Pull the gentleman. Pull the gentleman was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly stabbed with his sword. Instant kill. Never speak when you're fighting. A lesson learned in blood. This sword went straight for the space between Yanjun's eyebrows. However, as soon as he thrust his sword out, it was caught between 2 of Yanjun's fingers. Almost at the same time, the space where Yi Xian was suddenly split open. However, Yi Xian had already reappeared hundreds of feet away. To be more precise, he'd retreated the moment he'd attacked. That was why Pull the gentleman's finger hadn't struck him. Pull. The gentleman held Yi Xian's sword and faced the gentleman. Yi Xian said, "It seems that having your body shattered twice has taught you a lot." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Please enlighten me, Miss Pull Jun." Pull. The gentleman walked towards Yi Xian. "What's the fastest?" Yi Xian said, "The heart." Pull. The gentleman nodded, "That's right. When we fight, we can't rely on our instincts alone because some people's speed surpasses our instincts by several times, just like me and the gentleman from before. My speed surpasses our instincts, which is why you couldn't dodge my finger." And this time, the reason he was able to dodge it was because he had already anticipated that I would make a move. So, he had already retreated before I even made a move. Yi Xian frowned. "Prediction?" Pull. The gentleman shook her head, "Not just prediction, but also mental calculation." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Mental calculation?" Pull. The gentleman nodded. "Fighting is like playing chess. Every move is like placing a chess piece. When a chess master plays, he's already calculated the possibilities of the next few dozen or even hundreds of moves before placing a chess piece. This is called mental calculation. When you attack with your sword, you shouldn't rigidly adhere to the sword technique, you should think of more possibilities. Just like just now, when you attacked with your sword, you chose to retreat immediately and avoided my fatal blow. This means that you've already entered the realm of the heart of the sword." Hearing this, Yi Xian suddenly saw the light. At this moment, he recalled what Swordsman had said to him, "Where the heart goes, the sword goes." What was speed? In fact, the pinnacle of speed was prediction. As for prediction, this was a very, very simple concept. Of course, he also understood that if he did not increase his speed to the limit, he had no right to predict. Just like when he fought Pull Jun, if he did not increase his speed to the limit, it would be useless even if he thought of how Pull Jun would attack. Thinking was not as fast as the other person. Pull Jun suddenly said, "We martial artists call it mental calculation, while you swordsmen should call it the heart of the sword. Using the heart to control the sword, using the heart to calculate the sword, if you add the sword technique just now to the heart of the sword, it will become even more terrifying." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Is the heart of the sword also divided into realms?" Pull Jun nodded, "Yes. It's like when people play chess, some can predict 10 moves after placing a chess piece, while others can predict 100 moves. Simply put, there are 3 realms, namely the initial realm, the great achievement realm, and the pinnacle realm." Yi Xian said softly, "I'm now considered to be at the initial realm." Pull Jun nodded, "Yes. But it's a little special." Yi Xian was puzzled, "Why do you say that?" Pull Jun said, "Because I'm only at the Dao realm." In fact, she was also a little shocked. Yi Xian was at the Dao realm, while she was at the peak of the eternal realm. Moreover, she could advance at any time if she wanted to. Strictly speaking, she was 3 major realms higher than Yi Xian. However, when facing Yi Xian, she still did not dare to underestimate him, especially now. As if thinking of something, she suddenly looked at him. "Do you want to continue?" Yi Xian did not speak, but directly retreated 100 feet. As soon as he retreated, the space in front of him directly cracked. Yi Xian glanced at Pull Jun, thinking that it was a close call. If he had answered this woman's question, it would have been over. He suddenly realized that fighting could be done like this. Pull Jun was about to speak. At this moment, the space in the sky suddenly trembled, followed by a huge space vortex appearing in the sky. Pull Jun suddenly looked up, her face gradually turning cold. "Let's go first." Yi Xian hesitated, then asked, "Did someone from the Tian family come?" Pull Jun nodded. Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. It's not convenient for me to participate." Pull Jun said, "Let's go." Yi Xian turned to leave, but after taking 2 steps, he suddenly stopped. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly walked to Pull Jun, then said, "Miss Pull Jun, don't be afraid. I am the Misfortune Realm's young master, and this matter will be handled by the Misfortune Realm. If the Tian family does not give face to the Misfortune Realm, then the Misfortune Realm will be destroyed." Inside the prison pagoda, the Misfortune Gate suddenly trembled, almost going berserk. Chapter 1526. The Disaster Cause. Yi Xian had been thinking about a problem. He had the disaster body and the disaster cause. Since the disaster cause was causing trouble for him every day, why didn't he cause some trouble for the disaster cause? Moreover, even if he didn't take the initiative to cause trouble, wouldn't there be trouble? Definitely not. No matter what, the cause of misfortune would find him. There was no point in running away. Since there was no point in running away, he might as well take the initiative to cause trouble and let the door of disaster take the blame. At most, he would perish together. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Wan Jun looked at Yi Xian. Are you sure? Yi Xian smiled. Miss Wan Jun, do I look like I'm joking? Wan Jun said softly, this is my business. Yi Xian looked at the sky. From now on, your business is my business. Whoever bullies you is bullying me, Yi Xian, bullying my disaster realm. Whoever dares to bully my disaster realm will be killed no matter how far away you are. Wan Jun, the door of disaster, as the vortex appeared in the sky, the entire Great Barren Mountain range was shocked. Countless monsters raised their heads and looked in the direction of Burial Mountain. At this moment, a fiery red flag suddenly flew out from the black vortex. On the fiery red flag, there was a huge word, Tian. As the flag floated out, a voice came from the spatial vortex, the Tian family is handling matters. Those who are not involved, please leave. The Tian family. As the voice sounded, the entire Great Barren Mountain range shook. In an instant, the countless demon beasts around Burial Mountain fled in all directions like birds startled by the mere twang of a bow. Yi Xian looked around and frowned. This Tian family was so arrogant. At this moment, Wan Jun suddenly said, it's not too late to leave now. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, a young man walked out from the sky. The young man wore a brocade robe and held a folding fan in his hand. At the end of the folding fan was a jade pendant. After the young man appeared, he looked around and smiled, Great Barren Mountain Range. As he spoke, he looked down at Wan Jun, cousin, how have you been? Cousin. Yi Xian's expression was a little strange. This was a family. Family infighting? Yi Xian thought of the Yi family of Qingcheng. It seemed that any family would have internal strife. Wan Jun turned to the young man. Tian Xiu, you're alone? The man called Tian Xiu laughed and said, cousin, am I that weak in your eyes? Wan Jun was expressionless. Don't you know what kind of trash you are? The smile on Tian Xiu's face gradually darkened when he heard this. He seemed to have thought of something and suddenly looked at Yi Xian, who was standing next to Wan Jun. Are you here to rescue my cousin? Yi Xian nodded. It's me. Tian Xiu closed his fan and smiled. I can tell you that no matter who it is, no matter what background he has, the Tian family will take his head. Inside the prison pagoda, the door of disaster suddenly trembled. No one knew what it meant. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, I'm from the misfortune world. Can you give my misfortune world some face? Disaster realm? Tian Xiu shook his head and smiled. What kind of rubbish place is that? I've never heard of it. Yi Xian blinked. You've never heard of the misfortune world? Tian Xiu smiled. Is the misfortune world famous? Yi Xian turned to look at Wan Jun. Wan Jun said indifferently, his rank is too low. He can't come into contact with the core things of the family. His rank is too low. Yi Xian was speechless. This girl's words were too hurtful. Because Wan Jun had said it very loudly and intentionally for Tian Xiu to hear. The smile on Tian Xiu's face gradually darkened when he heard Wan Jun's words. He didn't dare to provoke Wan Jun. Instead, he looked at Yi Xian. Do you think you can protect the misfortune world? Yi Xian nodded hurriedly. My misfortune world is invincible. The door of disaster was speechless. Invincible. Tian Xiu laughed extremely loudly. Invincible? That's the funniest joke I've ever heard. Yi Xian clenched his fists, appearing very angry. How dare you humiliate my misfortune world? Tian Xiu looked down at Yi Xian and sneered. Humiliate the misfortune world? What kind of rubbish place is the misfortune world? Is it worthy of being humiliated by the Tian family? In front of the Tian family, the misfortune world isn't even comparable to an ant. At this moment, a bloody light suddenly flew out from Yi Xian's body. Boom! Before Tian Xiu could react, he was directly hit by a bloody door. In an instant, Tian Xiu's soul was destroyed. Not even a piece of him was left. The one who attacked was the door of disaster. Seeing the door of disaster attack, Wan Jun's expression gradually turned serious. No one knew what she was thinking. Yi Xian glanced at the door of disaster. Damn, he realized that this guy might be many times more powerful than he imagined. That young man was at least in the eternal realm, but he was instantly killed. It could be said that apart from the three swords, no one could stop this broken door. Should he be more friendly when facing this door in the future? In the sky, the door of disaster trembled slightly. Lightning flashed around it. Anger. It was very angry. It was fine if it was bullied by that swordsman. What kind of trash dared to insult the misfortune world? Did it really think that the misfortune world was easy to bully? At this moment, on the other side of the great desolate mountain range, Swordsman suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of the door of disaster. As the swordsman looked, the door of disaster in the sky suddenly turned into a streak of bloody light and entered Yi Xian's body like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. Yi Xian and Wan Jun were dumbfounded. On the 9th floor, the door of disaster hid in a corner and shivered. At this moment, Lil Tower slipped into the 9th floor. Lil Tower flew in front of the door of wretched disaster and hopped around. Lil Heir, I said before that you would recognize me as your father. Have you considered it? If you don't want to be my son, then recognize me as your grandfather. The door of disaster, hearing Xiao Ta's words, Yi Xian was speechless. This Xiao Ta would be beaten up one day. Beside Yi Xian, Wan Jun suddenly said, things may have gotten a little serious. Yi Xian said, it was killed by that door. Wan Jun turned to look at Yi Xian, isn't that door yours? Yi Xian said, it's mine. However, one should take responsibility for his actions. It will solve itself. Wan Jun hesitated, then said, can we do that? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Wan Jun gave a thumbs up, impressive. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, a powerful aura suddenly surged out from the spatial vortex in the sky. Yi Xian looked up, his left hand tightly gripping the sword in his hand. Wan Jun said softly, a decent one has arrived. As soon as she finished speaking, an old man walked out from the spatial vortex. The old man wore a simple gray robe and held a sheathed longsword in his hand. A swordsman. Yi Xian's eyes lit up. What he wanted the most was to fight a swordsman. Wan Jun looked at the old man, third uncle, I didn't expect you to come this time. The old man's expression was calm, isn't it better to stay here and wait for time to run out? Wan Jun said fiercely, I'm not convinced. The old man shook his head, if you're not convinced, then die. Wan Jun said with a smile, bring it on. He smiled and said, then come. At this moment, the old man suddenly shook his head, let's put this aside for now. As he said that, his gaze fell on Yi Xian, did you kill Tian Xiu? Then, his gaze fell on Yi Xian, did you kill Tian Xiu? Yi Xian shook his head, no. The old man frowned, you dare to do it, but don't dare to admit it? Yi Xian said, I really didn't kill him. The old man looked at Wan Jun, and Wan Jun said calmly, I didn't kill him either. The old man looked at Yi Xian, if you didn't kill him, then you let Wan Jun go, right? Yi Xian nodded. The old man stared at Yi Xian, who gave you the guts to meddle in my family's affairs? Yi Xian pointed at the old man, I want to save him, so I did. You're not convinced? Come and hit me then. Wan Jun was speechless. The old man narrowed his eyes. I've never seen such an arrogant person. Looks like he has quite the backing. Yi Xian said angrily, I'm from the disaster realm. Inside the prison pagoda, the disaster realm trembled slightly. If it wasn't for that swordsman, it would have smashed Yi Xian into meat paste. Damn, why did they have to put all the blame on the disaster realm? In the sky, the old man frowned slightly. Disaster realm? As he said that, he looked at Yi Xian. You think you can be so arrogant just because you're in the disaster realm? As soon as he said that, he suddenly pointed with his finger, and a sword light slashed down from the sky. Below, Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his sword, slash. Chi! A ray of sword light shot up into the sky. In the sky, the old man's sword light was directly slashed into pieces, and then, the space in front of the old man was directly torn apart. Seeing this scene, the old man was shocked. This young man's sword was so sharp. Not daring to think too much, the old man suddenly pulled out his sword and stabbed. It was a tit for tat. Boom! A ray of sword light suddenly exploded in front of the old man, and the old man retreated several tens of feet, but he did not stop, and a sword stabbed at him again. The old man blocked with his sword. Boom! The old man retreated nearly 100 feet again, and as soon as the space in front of him was torn apart, thousands of dark energy swords appeared, and then, these dark energy swords directly flew towards the old man. The old man's pupils constricted, and then he swung his sword, causing an expanse of sword light to shoot out like a waterfall. Bang! 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 In an instant, countless rays of sword light exploded throughout the sky, and then the entire sky was torn into countless pieces. In the distance, Yi Xian was just about to attack again when the spatial vortex in the distance suddenly trembled violently, and then numerous formidable auras surged out. Yi Xian was even more excited when he witnessed this scene. On the other hand, Wan Jun's expression changed, and she immediately appeared by Yi Xian's side and grabbed Yi Xian's arm. Let's go. As soon as she finished speaking, she brought Yi Xian with her as she flew into the sky. In the sky, Yi Xian hurriedly said, I'm not leaving, I can still fight. Wan Jun said angrily, fight my ass. Someone above the eternal realm has arrived. And there's more than one. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, it's fine, I can still fight. Wan Jun glared angrily at Yi Xian, there's someone more formidable than me, and there's more than one of them. Yi Xian blinked, don't be afraid, I'm from the misfortune world. I'm the young master of the misfortune world. Meanwhile, an icy cold voice suddenly resounded, can you be a little more shameless? Yi Xian was stunned when he heard this. Who's speaking? It didn't take long for Yi Xian's expression to change. It's the door of misfortune. Damn it, this fellow's been angered to the point of speaking. P.S. Please give me tickets. Chapter 1527. To be frank, Yi Xian was a little shocked. This door of disaster actually spoke. Just as he was about to study it, Wan Jun brought him and disappeared into the horizon. As for the old man beside him, he didn't stop them. Because he was afraid of death. If it was just Yi Xian, he wouldn't be able to kill him. However, with Wan Jun, he had a chance. He didn't dare to take the risk. Not long after they disappeared, two people suddenly walked out from the whirlpool, a man and a woman. Seeing both of them, the old man's face suddenly changed. He quickly walked in front of them and respectfully greeted, Sage, Heavenly Mother. Sage. Heavenly Mother. These two's position in the Tian family is only second to the Tian family's master and master. Sage looked into the distance. Who was that young man just now? The old man said in a deep voice, I don't know who he is. However, he claimed to be from the disaster realm. Disaster realm. Sage and Heavenly Mother looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with deep meaning. The old man hesitated for a bit before saying, "Sage, Heavenly Mother, why are you both here?" Sage looked at the old man. "This matter isn't something you can intervene in. Go back." That old man didn't dare to ask more. He respectfully bowed and retreated. Sage looked into the distance and whispered, "What do you think?" Heavenly Mother's face was expressionless. "Kill him." Sage shook his head. "Don't underestimate him. Master said that this man is related to the rise and fall of our Tian family. To be able to affect our Tian family's rise and fall, he's definitely not an ordinary person." Heavenly Mother looked at Sage. "He saved Wan Jun. This means that he's already on the same side as Wan Jun. If we don't kill him, should we rope him in? If we rope him in, our Tian family will be in chaos." Sage sighed in a low voice. Wan Jun and the Tian family's master have a blood feud. To stand on Wan Jun's side, it means the Tian family will be in chaos. Sage suddenly said, "Is he really from the disaster realm?" Heavenly Mother shook her head. "Impossible." Sage asked, "Why do you say that?" Heavenly Mother looked into the distance. "Didn't you already see it?" Sage smiled. "Disaster body." The Heavenly Mother nodded. If he really came from the disaster realm, how could he be a person with a disaster body? Of course, he might really be from the disaster realm, but he definitely escaped. As she spoke, she looked into the distant horizon. No matter what, he must die, and so must Lu Jun. The sage said in a deep voice, "We can kill that man, but Lan Jun. The celestial master will not let us kill her." The Heavenly Mother shook her head. "Leaving her alive will be a scourge. Right now, she must hate the clan to the core, and she is a genius. If we allow her to continue growing, she will definitely become a great threat in the future." The sage said softly, "Heavenly Master, we have no choice but to be apprehensive." The Heavenly Mother fell silent. Celestial Master's position in the Tian family was very influential. It could be said that even the Tian family's Heavenly Master had to give her face. If it wasn't for her, Bai Jun wouldn't have survived until now. After a moment, Heavenly Mother said softly, "Act first and report later." The sage was still somewhat hesitant. At this time, a young man suddenly appeared. He wore a white robe, and his hands were hidden in his sleeves. He looked gentle and quiet. Celestial Imperial Court. The Tian family's young master. Tian Ke looked at the sage and the Heavenly Mother, smiled and said, "Father said that he will deal with the celestial master." The sage said, "That person can affect the rise and fall of my Tian family." Tian Ke smiled and said, "He is already standing on my cousin's side." The sage didn't speak anymore. He knew that if he didn't kill Bai Jun and that young man, the Tian family would really be in chaos. Thinking to this point, the sage said softly, "Then kill them." As his voice fell, he suddenly took a step forward, and with a light stroke of his finger, the space in front of him was directly broken. Millions of miles away, Bai Jun suddenly stopped. Qingcheng, Yi family, ancestral temple. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as prince will be removed, and Yi Lang will inherit. The one who spoke was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man, and the young man had a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. And on both sides were the Yi family's elders. Why? At this time, a somewhat timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral temple. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old, and her two small hands were tightly grasping the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, and she looked a little weak, and there was a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's blood sister. This time, when she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral temple, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince, why did you cripple him for no reason? The great elder coldly looked at Yi Ling. This is a family matter, why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral temple. Once again, she bowed to the elders. Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family over the mining rights at Nanshan Hill. He is fighting for the family, and his life is uncertain. But now, the family is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new Prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times, as a warning to others. The great elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, two Yi family's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new Prince Yi Lang, and he knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of prince, and it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. From now on, you'll be my personal guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you. Yi Lang nodded, drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall, do not hold back. Understood. Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was dressed in a tight-fitting robe that was tattered, and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Zhang Mu's head spun, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan, why are you butting in? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. This is truly unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply, I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you. Yi Lang nodded, Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu saw something, and suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder squinted his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 1528. Within the spatial crack, the Saint Monarch stared at the phantom, his heart still on guard. Because even now, he still couldn't feel the reality of this phantom. Logically speaking, this was basically impossible. One has to know that his current strength was already at the peak of the Nether River star field. At this moment, the phantom spoke again, "You can't kill him, but you can destroy his state of mind. As long as you go in and force the person behind him to make a move, his state of mind of the sword will collapse, and he will also disappoint the person behind him. Only when that person leaves will he possibly die." At the side, Tian Ke shook his head and smiled, "We can't kill him? Are you looking down on my Tian family?" The phantom suddenly slapped out. "Paw!" A resounding slap resounded, and immediately after, Tian Ke's entire body was directly sent flying, and he directly disappeared. He didn't die, just flew out of sight. Seeing this scene, the Saint Monarch and the Heavenly Mother's expression suddenly changed. At this moment, both of their hearts were incomparably shocked, because both of them actually couldn't see how the phantom attacked. At this moment, the phantom coldly said, "Looking down on your Tian family? What kind of trash is the Tian family? Are you even worthy of my respect?" The Saint Monarch stared at the phantom, "Who the hell are you?" The phantom looked at the Saint Monarch, "Don't care who I am, as long as you know one thing about Dao Yi, and that is that my goal is the same as yours, and that is to kill him." The Saint Monarch solemnly said, "With your strength, isn't it a simple matter to kill him?" Hearing this, the phantom suddenly flew into a rage. "Do you know how many people he has backing? This shameless person has backing everywhere. I'm really King convinced. I finally managed to get rid of that woman, and then another swordsman appeared. I'm really pissed off." Thinking of this, she felt somewhat sullen. Originally, she was about to complete the mission, but she didn't expect to encounter that swordsman. She was just passing by. Besides those 3 swordsmen, she could walk sideways with anyone she met. But she just had to encounter one of those 3 swordsmen. This was bloody bad luck. The Saint Monarch solemnly said, "Is his backing very strong?" The phantom's emotions slowly calmed down. She softly said, "Don't be afraid. It's just one person. Your Tian family can handle it." The sage took a glance at the phantom, but didn't say anything. The phantom said again, "If you don't go in and kill him now, believe me, when he comes out, the 2 of you won't be able to do anything to him. This person, now, seems to be on steroids. He just wants to fight, and he's only a step away from the common sword realm, no, only half a step. Once he reached the mortal sword realm, realms would no longer have much meaning to him. Also, the woman who went in with him has an ulterior motive. She brought him in on purpose. I don't know what her motive is, but it's definitely not a good thing for you. Besides, there's a law of the universe inside. Don't tell me you're not tempted." After the sage went silent for a moment, he said, "Your Excellency, this is a forbidden area for humans. Once you enter this place, your cultivation will be sealed." The phantom said, "Once they obtain the universal law, they will be able to use it to seal your cultivation when they come out, and their cultivation will not be affected at all. Hearing this, the sage's complexion immediately changed. How much hatred does Wan Jun have for the Tian family? It could be said to be a blood feud. If Wan Jun were to obtain the universal law, there was no doubt that she would directly slaughter the Tian family. Heavenly Mother suddenly said, throughout history, it's unknown how many experts have entered this forbidden area for humans. Those who are several times stronger than her haven't obtained the universal law. Why is your excellency so sure that she can obtain the universal law? The phantom said, she can't obtain it, but he might. Heavenly Mother frowned, why? The phantom said with some anger, because his big brother is awesome. Heavenly Mother, the phantom said again, you still have the chance to kill the two of them. As for the problem of coming out, you don't have to worry. If you kill them, I will naturally help you out. Of course, whether you go or not, it's up to you. After saying that, she directly disappeared. The sage turned to look at Heavenly Mother. Heavenly Mother said in a deep voice, we can't let her obtain the universal law. The sage nodded. Once Wan Jun obtained the universal law, it would undoubtedly be a huge disaster for the Tian family. The two of them no longer hesitated and directly turned into two white lights and disappeared not far away. In the forbidden area for humans, Yi Xian looked up at the distant palace. Miss Wan Jun, what is that? Wan Jun gently stroked the hair beside her ear and softly said, I also don't know what it is. Yi Xian turned to look at Wan Jun, you also don't know? Wan Jun nodded, this place is a forbidden area. Even experts above the eternal realm dare not enter. Moreover, those who have entered before have never left. As she said that, she paused and said, it's said that there is a universal law inside. Yi Xian said, Miss Wan Jun wants to obtain that universal law? Wan Jun nodded. Yi Xian smiled, then have you thought about how to get out? Wan Jun's expression was calm, if I can't obtain that universal law, I will also die if I leave. Yi Xian understood. This Miss Wan Jun is going all out. At this moment, Wan Jun suddenly said, you are a person with a disaster body, how can you still live for so long? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, I am the Misfortune Realm's young lord. The Misfortune Gate trembled, damn, this person is really going to be shameless. Wan Jun stopped and looked at Yi Xian, you want to shift the blame to the Misfortune Realm. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly, I've been seen through. Wan Jun said softly, your background is not simple, especially that door in your body. That door has already surpassed my understanding. As she said that, she paused and said, that door is hostile to you, but it did not dare to attack you. If I'm not wrong, that door is afraid of something. As Yi Xian glanced at Wan Jun, he sighed inwardly. None of these super experts are simple. They seem to be laughing and joking, but in fact, they know very well. Wan Jun suddenly stopped, there was a corpse not far from her and Yi Xian. It was a middle-aged man. When she saw this middle-aged man, Wan Jun's expression became extremely solemn. Yi Xian asked, do you know him? Wan Jun said solemnly, this person is called Qiu Yi. 1,000 years ago, he shocked the entire Nether River galaxy because he reached the Eternal Realm before the age of 30. It can be said that his cultivation speed is unprecedented. But then he disappeared for some reason. I never expected that he would come here. Moreover, he even perished here. Yi Xian looked around, who killed him? Wan Jun looked at the palace in the distance, her hands clenched, and no one knew what she was thinking. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked up to Qiu Yi and bowed slightly, Senior, do you have any inheritance to leave behind? I think I can do it. Wan Jun, the Misfortune Gate, Yi Xian still wanted to speak, but Wan Jun suddenly said, his soul has been destroyed. His soul had been destroyed. Yi Xian glanced at Qiu Yi's corpse and sighed softly. The path of a cultivator was actually a path of no return. Some people would disappear just by walking on this path. The two of them continued forward. Along the way, the two of them fell into silence. Clearly, this was not a simple place. Before long, the two of them stopped again. Not far in front of them, there was another corpse. It was an old man. Yi Xian turned to look at Wan Jun, but she shook her head. I don't know him. The two of them continued forward. Along the way, they saw about a dozen corpses, all of which were giants when they were alive. There were even experts from hundreds of thousands of years ago. The more the two of them walked, the more shocked they became. Even Yi Xian's expression became more and more solemn. One should know that the two of them had no cultivation at all. The two of them got closer to the palace, but they did not encounter any danger along the way, which surprised them. This was not normal. The two of them became even more cautious. Before long, the two of them arrived in front of the palace. It was an ancient palace, and the entire place looked a little desolate. A woman sat on the stone steps below the palace. The woman wore white armor and a feathered helmet. She held a silver spear in her hand, and she looked rather cold. At this moment, the woman in white armor was looking at Yi Xian and Wan Jun. To be more precise, she was looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian secretly raised his guard. There was actually a living person here. Wan Jun glanced at the woman, but did not say anything. No one knew what she was thinking. At this moment, the woman in white armor suddenly stood up and walked slowly towards Yi Xian. Disaster body, disaster door, disaster karma. Young man, you're really tough to survive until now. Yi Xian was shocked. You know about the disaster door. The woman in white armor stared at Yi Xian. If it wasn't for this door, do you think the two of you could have made it here? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then asked, Senior, you are? The woman in white armor stopped walking. She looked at Yi Xian, and suddenly pointed her spear at Yi Xian's abdomen. A trace of killing intent flashed in her eyes. The disaster door wants to divert the disaster? There was no movement from the disaster door. The woman in white armor suddenly put away her spear and sneered, so it was sealed. No wonder it was so low-key. There was still no movement from the disaster door. The woman in white armor looked at Yi Xian. Leave this place. After saying that, she turned and left. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss, wait. The woman in white armor stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian. What's the matter? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Miss, what is this disaster door? Inside the prison pagoda, the disaster door suddenly trembled and almost went berserk. Yi Xian did not even care about this stupid door. The woman in white armor looked at Yi Xian. You don't know where it came from? Yi Xian nodded. The woman in white armor said, After I tell you, leave this place and never come back. Is that all right? Wan Jun, Yi Xian blinked. Senior, what do you mean by that? The woman in white armor looked at Yi Xian. You're unlucky. I don't want to be implicated. Yi Xian, Wan Jun, the woman in white armor said again. Is that all right? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, Senior, please say it. He really wanted to know the origin of this disaster door. The woman in white armor nodded. There are 9 laws in the universe, and these 9 laws have 9 guardians. The disaster door is the guardian of the disaster law. As a disaster body, you should have fallen long ago, but you've survived until now. Right now, you're defying the heavens, truly defying the heavens, defying the laws of the universe. To put it simply, even if you don't do anything, as long as you're alive, you're defying the heavens. Yi Xian said in a low voice, even if I do something good, they won't forgive me, right? The woman in white armor looked at Yi Xian. Since you become a disaster body, it means that you've done something unacceptable in your previous life. In this life, even if you do something good, it will cause disaster karma. Saying this, she seemed to have realized something, and her eyes narrowed. Someone changed your fate for you. The person who changed your fate for you not only went against the disaster law, but also the life law, reincarnation law, and karma law. As she said this, she suddenly gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. The person who helped you is awesome. Yi Xian. P.S. Voter, awesome. Everyone can follow my official account, directly search for it, on the Green Phoenix Peak, and then click follow. There are games inside. Apart from that, there will be some activities recently, and you can get exquisite games, as well as physical books of Sword Realm and Sword Supreme. They're all free. Everyone can follow it. Chapter 1529. One had to admit that the white-armored lady was extremely shocked. Defying the laws of the universe? She knew how difficult that was. As the Tao protector of the universe, she knew how terrifying a single law was. And someone actually helped this youth to defy so many laws of the universe. The white-armored lady suddenly felt that this world was a little dangerous. At the side, Yi Xian shook his head. Actually, I don't know anything. He actually felt extremely sullen. Until now, he was still in a daze. All he knew was that along the way, he was constantly in trouble, getting beaten up daily, and the enemies were always the abnormal kind. Even their heads were smashed. When would such days come to an end? At this moment, the white-armored lady asked again, "Do you know who the enemy is?" Yi Xian looked at the white-armored lady. "Isn't it the cause of misfortune?" The white-armored lady shook her head. "Not just the misfortune law, the enemy should be the Cosmos God Court." Yi Xian frowned. "Cosmos God Court?" The white-armored lady nodded. "I told you before that there are 9 laws of the universe, and within the Cosmos God Court, there are 6 laws of the universe. The misfortune law is one of them." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Is this Cosmos God Court powerful?" The white-armored lady glanced at Yi Xian. "Do you think the door of misfortune is powerful?" Yi Xian hesitated for a while before nodding his head. Even though he didn't like the door of misfortune, he had to admit that it was powerful. With 3 swords, it was almost invincible. The white-armored lady looked at Yi Xian. "And it isn't the misfortune law, it's just the protector of the misfortune law. The real misfortune law is at least 100 or 1,000 times stronger than it." Yi Xian suddenly held his chest. His expression was one of pain. The white-armored lady asked, "What's wrong?" Yi Xian shook his head. "My heart hurts." The white-armored lady, Yi Xian looked at the white-armored lady. "You're also the protector of the universe law. Are you not on the same side as the Cosmos God Court?" The white-armored woman shook her head. "No." As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian and said, "Normally speaking, he shouldn't be alive, but he just so happens to be alive. So, I'm afraid this matter isn't over." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Where is the Cosmos God Court?" The white-armored woman asked, "Why do you ask?" Yi Xian said indifferently, "I want to bring my big brother to the Cosmos God Court to train. My big brother has been lonely for more than 100,000 years. I want to take him to have some fun." The door of disaster, the white-armored woman shook her head. "I do not know where the Cosmos God Court is." Yi Xian frowned. "Miss, you don't know?" The white-armored woman nodded. "It's not just me who doesn't know. The gate of misfortune in my body doesn't know either. Only the laws of the universe know." Yi Xian was silent. This was a bit of a headache. If he knew where the Cosmos God Court was, he would really bring Swordsman there. Qing-er. Yi Xian suddenly thought of Qing-er. Could Qing-er be looking for the Cosmos God Court? The white-armored woman suddenly said, "Let's go." Yi Xian was about to speak when the white-armored woman shook her head. "No, I have to go." Yi Xian looked at the white-armored woman. The white-armored woman said solemnly, "If I meet him, I might be implicated. Goodbye." As she finished speaking, she turned and left. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Miss." The white-armored woman turned and looked at Yi Xian. "Is there anything else?" Yi Xian hesitated. Then he said, "Miss, is there a law of the universe here, too?" The white-armored woman shook her head. "No. However, there is a law left behind by the law that I guarded. So, Outsiders who enter this place will have their cultivation suppressed. Wanjun suddenly asked, were you the one who killed those people earlier? The white-armored woman nodded. Yes, I did. Wanjun glanced at the white-armored woman but didn't say anything. The white-armored woman laughed coldly, the universal laws and higher laws. These fellows actually want to obtain and control the universal laws. They really don't know their limits. Wanjun sighed softly in her heart while her expression dimmed down. Her objective this time was to find the universal laws, but it would seem like she had no chance at all. She was already extremely lucky to be able to survive. The white-armored woman didn't speak further. She glanced at Yi Xian's stomach while a trace of killing intent flashed through the depths of her eyes. However, she didn't choose to attack in the end, and she just turned around and left. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss. The white-armored woman stopped and turned around to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled, Miss, it's fate that brought us to know each other. Allow me to give you something. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and then a strand of violet energy surged out from within it. There were over 100 strands of violet energy. A trace of surprise flashed through the white-armored woman's eyes when she saw the violet energy. What pure violet energy! Yi Xian smiled, it's fate that brought us to know each other. If you don't mind, then just accept this violet energy. Of course, if you're afraid of being tainted by calamity because of this, then I can understand. The white-armored woman glanced at Yi Xian, I'm not afraid. As soon as she finished speaking, she put the violet energy away, and then she hesitated for a moment before she said, Can I give you a little more? Yi Xian nodded, of course. As he spoke, he withdrew another 300 strands of violet energy. The white-armored woman put all of them away, and then she gazed at Yi Xian, I can't take your violet energy for nothing. She opened her palm as she spoke, and then a golden talisman suddenly floated over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was slightly surprised, what's that? The white-armored woman said, this talisman contains the energy of a universal law within it, and it can seal a person's cultivation after it's utilized. However, it's only a single chance. Yi Xian asked, can anyone be sealed? The white-armored woman shook her head, not if they're too strong. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, for example? The white-armored woman pondered deeply for a moment, and then she said, for example, someone who defies the heavens and changes one's fate. Yi Xian understood when he heard this. This thing was probably useless against those with 3 sword strikes, but it would definitely be useful against those with less than that. The only question was whether it would be useful against the door of misfortune. Yi Xian didn't refuse, and he put the talisman away. The white-armored woman glanced at Yi Xian, be careful of the door of misfortune within you. She's much more terrifying than you'd imagined. Farewell. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and vanished. As soon as the white-armored woman vanished, Yi Xian noticed that the world had suddenly started to change. The energy of the seal was slowly vanishing. Wanjun suddenly said, do you think she's recuperating here? Yi Xian spoke softly, that's not important. Wanjun nodded. She knew what Yi Xian meant, to form a good relationship. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Wanjun, what's your next plan? Wanjun was silent. Yi Xian said, Miss Wanjun, I'm afraid we'll have to part ways soon. Wanjun nodded, and she looked at Yi Xian, thank you for saving me. Yi Xian smiled. No problem. By the way, Miss Wanjun is a member of the Tian family, how did you end up like this? Wanjun was silent. Yi Xian smiled, if it's not convenient to say, Wanjun sat to the side, and softly said, my father was the previous Tian family's patriarch, and at that time, I was the Tian family's young master. One day, my father and my second uncle, who is the current Tian family's patriarch, Tian Lin, went to Sword Abyss in Styx Starfield. 10 days later, my second uncle returned. However, my father fell. My second uncle said that my father was in danger in Sword Abyss. I didn't believe it and wanted to use the family's power to investigate, but my second uncle became the patriarch with the support of some elders. After he became the patriarch, he immediately eliminated some elders who supported me, and wanted to kill me for treason, but was stopped by my Tian family's celestial master. After saying that, she sneered, then I was imprisoned in Burial Mountain by the family for 1,000 years. During the time I was imprisoned, my father's bloodline was almost slaughtered. Now, I'm the only one left. Yi Xian whispered, father should have been killed by my second uncle. Wan Jun faced Yi Xian, it's not should have been, it's him. Everyone in the Tian family knows that he did it. Yi Xian frowned slightly, why didn't the Tian family do anything? Moreover, they allowed him to become the Tian family's patriarch. Wan Jun shook her head, because after my father's death, the only one who can bear the responsibility of the Tian family is my second uncle. He is also the strongest person in the Tian family. If the Tian family chose to punish him, then my Tian family will instantly be torn apart. For the sake of the big picture, the elders of the Tian family could only sacrifice our bloodline to protect the Tian family. Speaking of this, her expression suddenly turned ferocious. It's a pity that hundreds of people in my family were all killed. Yi Xian sighed. Such a family is even more complicated than an emperor's family in the secular world. Wan Jun looked up at the sky, clenched her fists, and her nails pierced deep into her palms. If I don't take revenge for this blood feud, I, Tian Wan Jun, am not a human. Speaking of this, she turned her head to look at Yi Xian, I'm sorry. That time, I lured you to save me and dragged you into my Tian family's whirlpool, implicating you. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, both of them suddenly turned around. Not far away from them, there were two people walking towards them. The sage and Heavenly Mother. The sage looked at Yi Xian, you've obtained the universal law. Yi Xian was speechless. Damn it, this misunderstanding is too big. That white-armored woman just left, and the seal here disappeared. Obviously, these two thought that they had obtained the universal law. At this time, the sage added, Your Excellency, we don't wish to be enemies with you. As long as you're willing to hand over the universal law, my Tian family will never be enemies with you. Yi Xian smiled, if I say that I didn't obtain the universal law, would you believe me? The sage looked at Yi Xian, do you think I will believe you? Yi Xian smiled, if I hand over the universal law, will you really let me go? The sage nodded, I will. Yi Xian blinked his eyes, do you think I will believe you? The sage squinted his eyes, I know there's someone behind me, but do you know who I'm facing? It's the Tian family. Do you know the Tian family? Yi Xian turned his head and looked at Wan Jun. Wan Jun calmly said, the Tian family, the #1 family in Stick Star Field, a super force. With a single flag, 10,000 worlds will surrender. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Heavenly Mother suddenly said, why is there a need to talk nonsense with him? In this Stick Star Field, why would my Tian family be afraid of anyone? If there's someone behind him, we'll just eliminate them together. As her voice fell, she suddenly disappeared from her spot. Chi! The space in the field was suddenly torn apart. At this moment, the surroundings had returned to normal because the universal law seal had completely disappeared. Chapter 1530. Heavenly Mother's strength was above Ranjuan's. Her first move was a killing move. She didn't hold back at all. Obviously, she wanted to kill Yi Xian in one move. Because an expert at her level understood the importance of taking the initiative. Since she wanted to kill someone, she had to give it her all. The moment Heavenly Mother attacked, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, his mind suddenly became extremely clear. There was a difference of 3 major realms between him and Heavenly Mother. 3 major realms. Not to mention his current state, even if he had a God realm physical body, he definitely wouldn't be Heavenly Mother's match. Even if he had the undying bloodline, he might not be able to do it. The difference in realms was too great. Moreover, an expert who could reach this level must be a monster among monsters. To challenge someone 3 realms above him? That was impossible. Between life and death. The moment Heavenly Mother attacked, Yi Xian realized that he had no chance of winning. He could only die. A hopeless situation. It was different from when he fought Lady Ranjun. This time, it was a true hopeless situation because Heavenly Mother before him would absolutely not give him any chance. Death. Yi Xian felt death again. This death was even more real than when his body was shattered. Because he knew that the woman before him wouldn't give him any chance. If he couldn't take this attack, Yi Xian's soul would be annihilated. Death. Since he was going to die, why think so much? Death was the end. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. At this moment, Yi Xian's entire body relaxed. He had never felt so relaxed before. Death wasn't scary. What was really scary was the moment he faced death. Of course, facing death calmly didn't mean that he was going to be captured and let others do whatever they wanted. Facing death calmly was facing death calmly. He wasn't afraid of death, and his heart was fearless. This time, he really wasn't afraid of death. Yi Xian took a step forward and slashed with his sword. This sword wasn't the sword drawing technique, nor was it an instant kill. It was just a simple sword. A sword after facing death calmly. A sword after having no fear in his heart. Indifferent to life and death, fight if you're not satisfied. A sword slashed out. Boom. A figure suddenly retreated violently. This figure retreated more than 100,000 feet. This figure was not Yi Xian, but the Heavenly Mother. At this moment, the surroundings were deathly silent. Beside Yi Xian, Wan Jun, who was about to attack, looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. This. How is this possible? In the distance, the sage's eyes were also filled with disbelief. In the starry sky above the great desolate mountain range, the swordsman suddenly turned his head and his gaze landed on Yi Xian. His eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. The sword Dao has yet to enter the mortal realm, but this sword has. Can it be played like this? As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. How interesting. In the forbidden area, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Had he entered the mortal realm? No. Yi Xian could feel that his sword Dao had yet to enter the mortal realm. But that sword just now had entered the mortal realm. This sword had already surpassed the realm. In front of this sword, one's realm was meaningless. Yi Xian looked at the unparalleled sword in his hand and smiled. Comprehended between life and death. Let's call it the sword of life and death. The sword of life and death. This sword was a mortal sword. In the truest sense of the word, it was a mortal sword. In the distance, the Heavenly Mother looked at the cracked space around her. She was slightly stunned. After a while, she stared at Yi Xian. How is this possible? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly disappeared on the spot. A ray of purple light tore through the space. Wherever the purple light passed, the space cracked inch by inch. Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Shrine. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral shrine. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to depose Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral shrine and said timidly, Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Grand Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the Grand Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral shrine. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is unfair. Impudent. The Grand Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Grand Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince's position. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she didn't cry. She just clutched her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. You can be my personal guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through water and tread on fire for the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back. Understood. Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something and stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt his head spin, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Peng! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded. You are very good. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu did not know what he saw, but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his expression turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his expression changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu's head spun, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's expression turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 1531. The sudden disappearance of the door of adversity caused Yi Xian and the others to be slightly stunned. Wasn't this fellow very arrogant just a moment ago? Why did he suddenly run away? Yi Xian turned to look in the direction of the desolate mountain range. Could it be because of the swordsman? He knew that the door of adversity was afraid of the swordsman. Right at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly surged from the horizon. Seeing this scene, Wan Jun's expression instantly changed. She directly pulled on Yi Xian's hand. "Let's go." As she spoke, she was about to leave with Yi Xian, but at this moment, the sage and Heavenly Mother blocked their way. The sage looked at Yi Xian and Wan Jun. "You want to leave now?" "It's too late." As soon as the sage's voice fell, the space above their heads suddenly tore open. In the next moment, a middle-aged man walked out. As this middle-aged man walked out, the entire world seemed to ripple like water. Wan Jun glared at the middle-aged man who walked out, her eyes filled with undisguised killing intent. The Tian family's heavenly master, Tian Lin. One of the strongest powerhouses in the Nether River Star Field. Tian Lin's gaze directly fell on Yi Xian. "The universal law is on you." Obviously, he was here for the universal law. Yi Xian shook his head. "Not at all." Tian Lin chuckled. "Actually, I'm very curious about your origin. Because I've already investigated before coming here, there's no one like you in the entire Nether River Star Field. Logically speaking, a monstrous genius like you should be famous throughout the world. However, it's like you appeared out of thin air. As for your origin, I couldn't find anything at all. If I'm not wrong, you should be from somewhere else." Yi Xian smiled. "If I said I came from the disaster realm, would you believe me?" Tian Lin looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "You want to use the disaster realm to suppress me?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "Let's not talk nonsense. If you're here for the universal law, then I can tell you that the universal law isn't on me." Tian Lin smiled. "Do you think I'll believe you?" Yi Xian waved the sword in his hand. "I am a swordsman. A swordsman disdains lying." Tian Lin hadn't even spoken when the Heavenly Mother suddenly spoke coldly. "Bullshit. You disdain to lie. You're the most shameless swordsman I've ever seen. I really don't understand how a showy person like you could have such a high level of cultivation in swordsmanship." Yi Xian was speechless. In the sky, Tian Lin smiled and said, "My Tian family's heavenly teacher said that you are related to the future of my Tian family. I understand what she means. She wants my Tian family to rope you in, but I don't believe her. I feel that my Tian family's fate is in our own hands." As he spoke, he placed his right hand behind his back and said with a smile, "I know your identity isn't simple. Come, I'll give you a chance to call for help. Call for help." Inside the World Prison Pagoda, the door of misfortune suddenly raised its head, its expression cold. "Idiot. Call for help. These people were too stupid. As soon as they saw Yi Xian, they would directly beat him up. They even gave him a chance to call for help. Call your mother. Let this guy call for help. If he called for help, what was the point of fighting? The door of misfortune was so angry that its chest hurt. Both of its chests hurt. She had no choice. Because she was currently being suppressed, she couldn't use the karma disaster technique. Otherwise, she wouldn't have found people from the Tian family to target Yi Xian. Because they were too stupid. These people were here to train Yi Xian. Don't be afraid of a strong opponent, only afraid of a pig-like teammate. Outside the World Prison Pagoda, Yi Xian smiled and said, "My big brother usually doesn't make a move." Tian Lin smiled and said, "Big brother?" Yi Xian nodded and said, "He usually doesn't make a move." Tian Lin smiled and said calmly, "In that case, your big brother is very powerful?" Yi Xian said seriously, "Of course he's very powerful." Tian Lin revealed a playful smile and said, "How powerful is he?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Invincible." In his heart, Swordsman, Qing, and that green-clothed man were all invincible. Invincible? Tian Lin was stunned, and then he laughed and said, "You're saying that your big brother is invincible?" Yi Xian nodded. Tian Lin shook his head and smiled, "Then can you call your big brother over? I want to see what it means to be invincible." Yi Xian was about to speak when a furious voice suddenly resounded, "Who's calling your mother?" As soon as the voice resounded, a woman suddenly appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. It was the door of misfortune. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. Why has this woman appeared again? Tian Lin frowned slightly when she saw the door of misfortune. "Who are you?" The door of misfortune glanced coldly at Tian Lin and said, "Call someone, call someone." "I'll call you ancestor." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly smashed her fist forward. A bolt of mysterious blood lightning flashed through the air. Tian Lin's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he swiftly raised his arms to block it. Bang! Tian Lin's figure was blasted flying, and he flew over 3 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped moving, his body instantly exploded into pieces. The others were slightly stunned when they witnessed this scene. Even Yi Xian was slightly stunned. Doesn't she want me dead? What was she trying to do? At this moment, Tian Lin's mind had gone blank. My body was blasted apart with a single punch? Right at this moment, the door of misfortune suddenly clenched through the air and grabbed Tian Lin's throat. She gazed coldly at Tian Lin and said, "I don't understand. Do you think you're very strong? Call someone? Are you an idiot? If you want to kill him, then just do it." "Who do you want him to call?" "I'll call your mother." As she spoke, she suddenly exerted force. Bang! Tian Lin's soul exploded apart. However, in the next moment, the space around him trembled, and then a soul suddenly condensed into form. It was Tian Lin. Yi Xian was slightly shocked when he witnessed this scene. "You can do that?" Meanwhile, Wan Jun said, "This is the soul condensation technique, the supreme secret technique of my Tian family. It can condense a shattered soul 3 times in a day." Yi Xian nodded, "Not bad." In the distance, the door of misfortune gazed at Tian Lin. Tian Lin's expression was extremely solemn. "You're his big brother?" Yi Xian, the door of misfortune flew into a rage when she heard this, "I'm your ancestor." As she spoke, she was about to attack when Tian Lin suddenly said hurriedly, "Your Excellency, please wait. My Tian family surrenders." Surrenders. Yi Xian, the sage and heavenly mother were slightly stunned as well. Surrenders just like that? Tian Lin's expression was extremely unsightly. As soon as they exchanged blows just now, he knew that he wasn't a match for this woman. Not at all. He could only choose to surrender. Tian Lin looked at the door of misfortune and cupped his fists. "Your Excellency, this is all a misunderstanding. My Tian family didn't know that this young Master Yi is one of your people. If my Tian family had known that he was one of your people, even if my Tian family had 100 guts, I wouldn't have targeted him. Yi Xian's expression became somewhat strange. The door of misfortune looked at Tian Lin and didn't speak. However, its expression became increasingly gloomy. Seeing this, Tian Lin hesitated for a moment before bowing respectfully to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, everything that happened before was a misunderstanding. I represent the Tian family to apologize to young Master Yi. Yi Xian hurriedly said, it's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. I forgive all of you. Tian Lin was slightly taken aback. So easy to talk to? At this moment, Yi Xian spoke again, it's all a misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding. I'm willing to be on good terms with the Tian family. From now on, I'll share life and death with the Tian family. Tian Lin was stunned, and then he smiled. I didn't expect you to be so understanding and reasonable. I also guarantee you that from now on, my Tian family will share life and death with you. Whoever makes an enemy of you will be making an enemy of my Tian family. My Tian family will be the first to not let them off. As he spoke, he glanced at the door of misfortune, but he noticed that the woman's expression was even gloomier than before. What's going on? Could it be that this big shot isn't satisfied? Tian Lin was puzzled. At this moment, the Holy Mother behind Tian Lin was about to speak, but Yi Xian beat her to it. Sect leader Tian Lin, are my enemies the Tian family's enemies? Tian Lin smiled, of course. Yi Xian said in a serious tone, I'm very touched. Really? Tian Lin felt that something wasn't right. He suddenly turned his head, and at this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck him. Boom! Tian Lin's soul directly exploded, but a moment later, his soul condensed once more. Soul consolidation technique. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was somewhat shocked. He was a little tempted by this soul consolidation technique. This thing was equivalent to having 3 more lives at a critical moment. At this moment, Wan Jun, who was beside Yi Xian, suddenly said, you like this soul consolidation technique? Yi Xian nodded vigorously. Wan Jun said, I'll teach you when the time comes. Yi Xian blinked. Okay. Wan Jun shook her head, you don't have to be so polite. Yi Xian smiled, we're on the same side. There's no need to be polite. We're on the same side. Wan Jun's expression changed subtly. In the distance, Tian Lin looked at the door of misfortune, a little confused. Senior, what do you mean? The door of misfortune coldly stared at Tian Lin. Take a guess. Tian Lin glanced at Yi Xian, little friend, hasn't our misunderstanding been resolved? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Tian Lin was a little confused, then this senior, Yi Xian looked at the door of misfortune in the distance, a little displeased, little misfortune, how can you be like this? They've already admitted their mistake. How can you be so unforgiving? You've really gone too far. The door of misfortune turned to look at Yi Xian, angrily saying, shut up. Yi Xian blinked, little misfortune, you can't be like this. You should win people over with virtue, At this moment, 2 blood-colored lightning bolts suddenly appeared on the hands of the door of misfortune. Seeing this, Yi Xian hurriedly shut his mouth. Although the door of misfortune was suppressed by sword qi, even if it was suppressed, this thing was still a little too ridiculously strong. The door of misfortune coldly looked at Yi Xian, then turned to look at Tian Lin, you idiot. As she spoke, she was about to attack, but at this time, Tian Lin suddenly pointed angrily at the door of disaster. You've gone too far. As the sound of his voice faded, he waved his right hand. The sky suddenly split open, and then he took out a token. Welcome, ancestor. Boom. The token soared into the sky. Summoning the ancestor. In the distance, Yi Xian blinked his eyes. This was a little too much. Chapter 1532. Ancestor Summoning. Yi Xian was a little surprised. Of course, he was more curious. Would the Tian family's ancestor be able to destroy the Door of Disaster? Yi Xian glanced at the Door of Disaster. The Door of Disaster stood there with a calm expression. There was no fluctuation in its eyes. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression darkened. The Tian family's ancestor might not be able to kill this woman. He looked at Tianlin again. Tianlin's expression was extremely ferocious. Anger. He, the dignified head of the Tian family, had already lowered his voice and compromised. Yet this woman was still unwilling to let him go. She was too much. Even a clay figurine had some anger. In the sky, the tokens suddenly turned into nothingness. At the same time, a white-haired old man appeared in the sky. With the appearance of this white-haired old man, an invisible pressure suddenly spread between heaven and earth. In an instant, the entire world trembled as if it could not withstand this old man. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression gradually became solemn. This old man looked quite fierce. Wanjun suddenly said softly, "Tian Xian." The strongest ancestor in the history of the Tian family. He was also the one who brought the Tian family to its peak. Even the Tian family does not know how strong he is. Yi Xian looked at the Door of Disaster in the distance. The Door of Disaster's expression was still very calm. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly grabbed Wanjun's hand. "Let's go." With that, he was about to leave with Wanjun. He knew that other than the three swords, no one could destroy the Door of Disaster. Not even Sister Nian and Tu. This woman was a bit heaven-defying. If she had not been suppressed by Swordsman's sword energy, she would probably be even more abnormal. It was better to escape first. At this moment, the old man in the sky suddenly said, "Little friend, please wait." Yi Xian stopped and turned to look at Tian Xian in the sky. "Senior, what's the matter?" Tian Xian glanced at the Door of Adversity, then looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Little friend, this happened because of you. Isn't it a little unkind for you to leave like this?" Yi Xian blinked. "Senior, it has nothing to do with me." Tian Xian shook his head and smiled, "Little friend, this old man already knows the ins and outs of the matter. I don't have any other meaning. My Tian family facing such a calamity is all because of the stupidity of our Tian family's head." As he spoke, he turned to look at the Door of Disaster and bowed slightly. "Miss, the Tian family has never shown any disrespect to the Disaster realm. I hope you will be magnanimous." Tian Lin's expression instantly became extremely unsightly when he saw Tian Gan admit defeat. He was not stupid. He knew that he had kicked an iron plate this time. This woman in front of him isn't someone the Tian family can afford to provoke. At this moment, the Heavenly Mother suddenly walked to Tian Lin's side and said a few words in a low voice. A moment later, Tian Lin's pupils suddenly shrank. He raised his head and glared angrily at Yi Xian in the distance. "She's not your brother at all." Yi Xian said with a straight face, "I never said that she's my brother." Tian Lin stared at Yi Xian before he died. "You tricked me." Yi Xian was somewhat innocent. "You're the one who said that you want to live and die with me. I didn't force you. You even said that my enemy is your enemy. To be honest, I'm very touched, really." Tian Lin was so angry that his liver almost exploded. What kind of words were these? The Heavenly Mother's expression was incomparably gloomy. It wasn't that she didn't want to tell Tian Lin earlier, but she was also dumbfounded by the Door of Adversity's operation. This woman had instigated them to kill Yi Xian in the beginning, but now, this woman was suddenly helping Yi Xian. What kind of operation was this? Actually, forget about the Heavenly Mother, even Yi Xian was a little confused at the beginning. This was because he didn't expect the Door of Adversity to suddenly attack Tian Lin. After thinking about it, he could only think of one possibility, and that was that this woman wasn't normal. At this moment, Tian Lin suddenly glared at Yi Xian. Since she's not your brother, then who is your brother? You. In the distance, the door of adversity suddenly slapped out. Boom. Tian Lin was directly struck by a blood lightning, and his soul instantly shattered. However, very quickly, Tian Lin's soul condensed once again. However, at this moment, his soul was incomparably illusory, as if it was transparent. This was the last time it condensed his soul. Tian Lin was slightly stunned by the attack. The door of adversity stared at Tian Lin with an incomparably cold expression. Brother, brother. Will you die if you don't mention him? Yi Xian, Tian Lin's expression was incomparably ferocious. Woman, what is the meaning of this? My Tian family targeted him, and you came to attack us. When we didn't target him, you attacked us. Is there something wrong with your brain? You. At this moment, the heavens' wrath suddenly sighed. The next moment, he waved his right hand. Boom. Tian Lin was directly suppressed by a powerful force. Tian Lin raised his head and looked at Tian Xian. I refuse to accept this. Tian Xian shook his head. Silly child, can't you see the situation clearly? As he said that, he glanced at Yi Xian in the distance. This lady and this little friend are enemies, but this little friend is still alive. Moreover, he's living very arrogantly. Do you understand? Hearing this, Tian Lin's entire body froze. He naturally understood what Tian Xian meant. At this moment, he finally regained his senses. That's right. This woman and this young man were enemies, but this young man was still alive. What did this mean? This meant that this young man wasn't simple either. The Tian family couldn't afford to offend this woman, and similarly, they couldn't afford to offend this young man. This was a fight between immortals, and mortals suffered. Thinking of this, Tian Lin slowly closed his eyes. In fact, the Tian family shouldn't have gotten involved in the first place. It was all because of the universal law. This time, he didn't come to save the emperor, but for the universal law. Everyone in the world knew that there was a universal law here. Now that this place had returned to normal, it was obvious that the universal law had been obtained by someone. How greedy. Tian Lin sighed softly. He glanced at the door of disaster below. At this moment, he understood what it meant by there would always be someone better than you out there. The Tian family had been living too comfortably these past few years. In the entire Nether River Star Field, who dared to go against the Tian family? Over time, the Tian family had become arrogant. Even if it was him, he had become incomparably arrogant. He felt that there was no one in this starry sky that the Tian family couldn't destroy. Arrogant. Arrogant. Thinking of this, Tian Lin deeply bowed towards the door of disaster. I've troubled you previously. Please be magnanimous and spare this one's life. Cower? It wasn't shameful to cower in front of such an expert. The door of disaster looked at Tian Lin. If apologies were useful, why would I still practice martial arts? As her voice fell, she waved her right hand. Boom. Tian Lin's soul was directly erased by a blood lightning. Completely erased. This time, his soul was truly destroyed. At the side, Yi Xian glanced at the door of disaster. This woman had character. Tian Xian looked at the door of disaster below. I wonder if you're satisfied? The door of disaster looked at Tian Xian. Why? Are you not satisfied with what you said? Tian Xian smiled. I don't dare to be dissatisfied. The door of disaster slowly walked towards Tian Xian. Do you think you're a big shot? Tian Xian frowned slightly. What was wrong with this woman? She was so angry. Qi La. At this moment, more than 10 blood lightning bolts suddenly appeared around the door of disaster. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed when these bolts of blood-red divine lightning appeared. Even Yi Xian's expression became extremely solemn. Back then, his god realm physical body was as fragile as paper in front of this divine lightning. Even Nian Nian could only barely withstand the divine lightning. In the sky, Tian Xian said solemnly, "Your Excellency, my Tian family is convinced." The door of adversity stopped in its tracks. She threw a cold look at Tian Xian and then at Yi Xian. She stared at Yi Xian without hiding the murderous intent in her eyes. This killing intent sent chills down one's spine. Yi Xian smiled. "I'm convinced too. Don't hit me." Tian Xian was speechless. The door of disaster suddenly walked towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This woman wouldn't go crazy, right? He knew that this woman had been infuriated recently. The door of disaster walked in front of Yi Xian. She was very close to Yi Xian. Two blood lightning bolts circled around her arms. Behind Yi Xian, La Jun suddenly walked to Yi Xian's side. She looked at the door of disaster and slowly clenched her right hand. The door of disaster looked at Yi Xian. After a long time, she smiled and said, "I have a suggestion. Do you want to hear it?" Yi Xian was a little curious. "What suggestion?" The door of disaster said seriously, "Do you want to reach the mortal sword realm?" Yi Xian nodded. The door of disaster said seriously, "It's useless for you to train like this." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why is that?" The door of disaster said, "Because you have Big Brother behind you. Think about it. If you let your big brother follow you all the time, under such circumstances, you will feel that you are not afraid of anything because he will support you. Under such circumstances, you will not be able to truly grow." Yi Xian thought for a while and then said, "You do have a point." The door of disaster smiled. "Yes. If you really want to reach the mortal sword realm and grow, you cannot have a backer. A backer will be a burden to you. So, you should let your big brother leave. That way, you will be able to grow." Yi Xian hesitated and said, "If my big brother leaves, will you beat me to death?" The door of disaster blinked. "Don't you want to train?" Yi Xian was furious. "Train? Train your grandma. How many levels higher are you than me? Are there 5? You are bullying the weak and won't let me call for help. Do you think I am stupid?" The door of disaster stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said angrily, "What are you looking at?" As he said that, he slapped his face. "Come, hit me. Kill me if you can." The door of disaster clenched its fists. Lightning surged around it and a formless pressure caused the world to tremble. Yi Xian suddenly clapped his hands and twisted his butt. Beaming, he said, "My elder brother is awesome. My younger sister is awesome. I want to rely on my elder brother. I want to rely on my younger sister. Come and hit me. Come and hit me. I really want to be hit. You. Ah." The door of disaster suddenly roared angrily. It suddenly slapped out. It was not aimed at Yi Xian but at the distant sky. Boom! Before Tian Xian could react, he was struck by a bolt of blood lightning. In the sky, the soul of heavenly wrath that was about to disappear was confused. "He is shameless. What does that have to do with me, everyone? P.S. Everyone can join the group, 1067154732. Welcome to complain, chat, and act cool. Group leader's photo." Chapter 1533. The sky was filled with flashes of blood-red lightning, and its might was oppressive. The door of disaster stared at Yi Xian with lightning flashing in its eyes. Killing intent. An invisible killing intent filled the surroundings, and the target of this killing intent was Yi Xian. Beside Yi Xian, Wan Jun's expression was extremely solemn. She had never sensed such a powerful killing intent before. She was puzzled. The door of disaster clearly wanted to kill Yi Xian, but it did not make a move. Why was that? From the looks of it, even if Yi Xian's sword had reached mortal mode, he was still no match for the door of disaster. At that moment, she thought of Yi Xian's big brother. How strong was that big brother? To think that this woman was so afraid of him. Wan Jun's heart was filled with curiosity. At that moment, the door of disaster suddenly pointed at Yi Xian. Just you wait, you be *tch. After saying that, it returned to the prison pagoda. As the door of disaster disappeared, the blood-red lightning instantly disappeared without a trace. In the end, she did not choose to make a move. To be more precise, she did not dare to. The swordsman had let Yi Xian out to train, but that did not mean that he would really let Yi Xian be killed. In particular, if she made a move, the swordsman would definitely make a move. This was because her strength was much higher than Yi Xian's. The swordsman would not allow her to make a move against Yi Xian. After the door of disaster disappeared, the smile on Yi Xian's face also disappeared. He had purposely provoked the door of disaster, but he knew very well that his current strength was still insufficient to contend against the door of disaster. Most importantly, the white-armored woman had said that the door of disaster was not the disaster law. The disaster law was even stronger than the door of disaster. Moreover, from the white-armored woman's words, it seemed that he had not only defied the disaster law, but also the karma law, the time law, the life law. In other words, he had offended at least half of the 9 universal laws. Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. It's too difficult for me. Meanwhile, the space in the distance suddenly split open, and then a woman walked out of it. The woman wore a long white dress and held an ancient book in her hand. When they saw this woman, the sage and the Heavenly Mother hurriedly bowed slightly. Heavenly Teacher. Heavenly Master. His position in the Tian family is only second to the clan head. Now that Tian Master had fallen, this Tian family naturally belongs to Master Tianshi. The Celestial Master nodded. She then looked at Wan Jun in the distance with a complicated expression. It's been hard on you all these years. Hua Jun fell silent. She did not hate the Celestial Master. If not for the Celestial Master's protection, she would not have survived at all. The Celestial Master opened her palm and a black seal suddenly flew into her hand from afar. With a light tap of her fingers, the black seal floated in front of Lan Jun. From this moment on, you are the patriarch of my Tian family. The Heavenly Mother's expression instantly changed when she heard this. One had to know that Wan Jun hated the Tian family very much. Once she became the family head, if there was a purge, the Heavenly Teacher glanced at the sage and the Heavenly Mother. The Tian family will be fine. The sage hesitated for a moment and said, Heavenly Teacher, should we inform the elders about this? The sage was expressionless. They have already agreed. The sage did not say anything else. The Celestial Master and the elders had agreed. This matter was basically set in stone. The Celestial Master walked in front of Wan Jun. Wan Jun did not take the black seal. The Celestial Master looked at Wan Jun. If you want to clear father's grievances, you must become the patriarch. Wan Jun shook her head. What's the use of clearing the grievances? They are already dead. The Celestial Master shook her head. You cannot think like this. Now, you can change the Tian family. Wan Jun looked at the Celestial Master. The Celestial Master said softly. All these years, the Tian family's path has become narrower and narrower. It needs reform. Wan Jun looked at the Celestial Master. Why not become the Tian family lord? The Celestial Master shook her head. I am not suitable. But suitable. Wan Jun frowned. Why? The Celestial Master looked at Wan Jun, because that position has always been yours. Wan Jun's hands slowly clenched. It had always been hers. In the past, Her father was the Tian family lord and she was the Tian family's young master. But then something happened. The position of the Tian family lord was taken by Tian Lin. The celestial master said again. We should take back what originally belonged to father. After a moment of silence, Wan Jun suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. What do you think? Yi Xian was slightly stunned. He did not expect Wan Jun to suddenly ask him this question. Yi Xian thought for a moment. This is an internal matter of the Tian family. Wan Jun looked at Yi Xian. I want to hear your opinion. Yi Xian pondered for a moment. My opinion is not suitable. Wan Jun was stunned. Then she smiled. Why? Yi Xian glanced at the celestial master. When father was in trouble, how did the Tian family treat our family? To be honest, I don't think such a cold-blooded family is worth staying. Moreover, this lady's motive for making her the patriarch is not that simple. As he spoke, Yi Xian kept staring at the celestial master. The celestial master looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, the Tian family is her home. Yi Xian smiled. It's her home? Then why did you watch her family get destroyed? I know it's for the sake of Daquan. For a family like yours, Daquan is equivalent to sacrificing anyone. Am I right? The celestial master was silent. Yi Xian continued. If I were Miss Wan Jun, would destroy the Tian family. The celestial master frowned. Young Master Yi, Yi Xian smiled. But I can see that Miss Wan Jun doesn't have that much hatred for the Tian family anymore. That's because the culprit is dead. Having said that, he looked at Wan Jun, as a friend, my advice is not to go back. Of course, it's still up to you. I respect and support your decision. Wan Jun smiled sweetly. Then I won't go back. Yi Xian nodded. All right. What do you plan to do next? After a moment of silence, Wan Jun said, Can I follow? Yi Xian was stunned. Wan Jun smiled. I'm just joking. I'm going to Sword Abyss because my father died there. I want to see that place. Sword Abyss. Yi Xian subconsciously asked, Do you need me to go with you? Wan Jun immediately said, Yes. Yi Xian was speechless. Wan Jun smiled. From your expression, you don't seem too willing. Yi Xian shook his head. It's not that I don't want to, but my intuition tells me that something bad might happen if I go with you. Wan Jun asked, The cause of calamity? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Wan Jun smiled. I'm not afraid. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Wan Jun, do you know? If it's not my big brother, anyone who follows me will suffer a calamity. He naturally would not forget that terrifying calamity. Even Nian Nian and Tu seemed so powerless in the face of that calamity. Wan Jun faced Yi Xian. I've said it. After saving me, we'll bear any karma together. Yi Xian hesitated and was about to speak when Wan Jun suddenly said, I'm not afraid, so what's there to be afraid of? Or do you think I'm pestering you? Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. Of course not. Wan Jun said, Then let's go to Sword Abyss. Saying that, she pulled Yi Xian and turned to leave. After Yi Xian and Wan Jun left, the Heavenly Master suddenly shook his head and said softly, No matter what, I must be the family head. The Heavenly Mother looked at the Heavenly Master. Heavenly Master, is it because of that youth that you insist on choosing Wan Jun? The Heavenly Master nodded. The Heavenly Mother was puzzled. Why? He's a person with a calamity body. The Heavenly Master looked at the distant horizon and said softly, A person with a calamity body can live until now, and live so comfortably. What does this mean? It means that there's someone behind him who can defy the laws of the universe. If our Tian family can hug this leg, our Tian family will be able to rise to the next level, and even jump out of this Nether River star field. Saying that, she turned to look at the Heavenly Mother. The fall of the Heavenly Master will definitely cause quite a stir. Some forces that were suppressed by our Tian family back then will probably cause trouble, especially the Sage sect. The two of you will go back to the Tian family and recall all the experts of our Tian family outside. The sage said in a deep voice, Heavenly Master, Wan Jun is currently very resistant to our Tian family. If we want her to be the family head, I'm afraid, the Heavenly Master said, I'll handle this matter. The sage glanced at the Heavenly Master. Good. Then I'll return to the family with the Heavenly Mother. After saying that, he and the Heavenly Mother disappeared. The Heavenly Master also turned and disappeared into the distant horizon. Not long after the Heavenly Master disappeared, a woman appeared in the field. It was the white-armored woman from before. The white-armored woman looked into the distance with a gloomy expression. She didn't expect to encounter the gate of adversity here. It wasn't a good thing to encounter the gate of adversity here. A moment later, the white-armored woman said softly, Damn it. After saying that, she disappeared. In the starry sky, Yi Xian was flying on his sword with Wan Jun by his side. Wan Jun said softly, This sword abyss is one of the two forbidden areas of our Nether River star field. Its degree of danger is second only to the forbidden areas of humans. Yi Xian asked, Why is it a forbidden area? Wan Jun said, Legend has it that a swordsman used his sword there. It was that sword that directly turned a large world there into an abyss, which is the sword abyss. The reason why it's dangerous is because there's an extremely terrifying and brutal sword Dao will there. The deeper you go, the stronger the sword Dao will. Swordsman. Yi Xian immediately became interested and quickly asked, Is it very strong? Wan Jun nodded with an incomparably solemn expression. Very, very strong. Ordinary experts can't even get close to the sword abyss. After saying that, she paused and said, Actually, strictly speaking, that place is more dangerous than this forbidden area. However, you can choose that place because if you can't go any further, you can retreat. But once you enter this forbidden area, it's basically impossible to get out. Yi Xian frowned slightly. If it's so dangerous, why do so many people go there? Wan Jun said in a low voice, Because a spirit ancestor once appeared there. It's said that the spirit ancestor buried a box there. A box. Yi Xian was stunned for a moment. The next moment, he directly jumped up. Spirit ancestor? A box? Is it that little white guy? Wan Jun looked at Yi Xian, a little surprised. It's said that the spirit ancestor's entire body is snow white. Do you know him? Yi Xian was a little dumbfounded. Know him? Of course he knew him. As if thinking of something, he suddenly said, Swordsman. The one who used the sword. Don't tell me it's that green-robed man. That can't be. That green-robed man has a gentle temperament. How can his sword Dao will be brutal? At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said timidly, Young master, gentle temperament. This word really doesn't suit master. You should use another word. Yi Xian. P.S. It's not that I'm late, but every time Zongheng updates the system, it needs to be reviewed. Chapter 1534. Gentle temperament? Xiao Ta was speechless. Until now, it could not forget its blood-red master. At that time, besides Xiao Bai, he would kill anyone. He even killed it. In short, its master went crazy and did not recognize his own family. Hearing Xiao Ta's words, Yi Xian was confused. I think your master's temper is quite good. Xiao Ta, Yi Xian asked again. Is it not good? Xiao Ta was silent for a moment, then said, He is quite good to his own people, and his temper was not bad. His temper was really bad in the beginning, sigh, when I followed master at that time. He was simply a pervert. One word of disagreement, he would kill your mother. Basically, no matter where he went, that world would be destroyed. He was simply a malefic. Moreover, he is even more troublesome than you, young master. Young master, trouble comes to you, but many of master's troubles were caused by him. Speaking up to this point, it paused, then said, actually, young master, you are very fortunate. Fortunate? Yi Xian was confused. Xiao Ta, you said I am fortunate? Xiao Ta said, compared to master before, you are really fortunate. Master in the past was really miserable. Back then, he fought his way out with real swords and spears. Behind him, there were millions of corpses. How could his bloodline break through? Because he was really crazy. Moreover, the people that master cared about in the past, too many died. For example, Grandpa Mu, master's mother, master's father. Especially the last battle that year, that battle, Sister Axiu and Sister Qi Bai Tian died in the battle, and two sisters Tian Ming also died in the battle. Arya and Xiao Bai were almost killed by that terrifying woman. That woman. Speaking up to this point, Xiao Ta seemed to have thought of something, his voice actually trembled. Yi Xian said in a low voice, you mean Qing, Xiao Ta hurriedly said, yes, that's her. Her name is Tian Ming. The strongest Tian Ming. If it weren't for Swordsman's help in that battle, everyone would have died. Even with the help of that swordsman, master still couldn't kill that woman. That woman is terrifying. Yi Xian was speechless. Wan Jun felt a little curious. Who is Xiao Ta's master? Also, who was the woman Xiao Ta was talking about? Meanwhile, Xiao Ta said, although master's temper isn't good, as long as you don't provoke him, he won't take the initiative to bully others. As for that woman, it's no longer a matter of whether she has a good temper or not. I feel that she dislikes everyone. Yi Xian said solemnly, Xiao Ta, I think Qing has a good temper. Xiao Ta suddenly jumped up, young master, don't joke around. She has a good temper? My God. Yi Xian was speechless. Wan Jun suddenly said, Xiao Ta, your young master has a body of adversity. Those who have the body of adversity will be plagued by adversity for the rest of their lives. Xiao Ta said angrily, the body of adversity is nothing. Master can kill the Mother ** king cause of adversity with one slash. Hee. Inside the prison pagoda, the door of adversity suddenly laughed coldly. Xiao Ta suddenly ran to the 9th floor. Xiao Er, are you unhappy? The door of adversity said angrily, get lost, I don't want to talk to you. If it weren't for that swordsman sealing her abilities, she would have smashed this stupid pagoda to pieces. Compared to Yi Xian, she was even more displeased with this stupid pagoda. Yi Xian was despicable, but this stupid pagoda was annoying, extremely annoying. Xiao Ta did not leave, but continued to say, Xiao Er, have some manners. The door of adversity stared at Xiao Ta. You're talking about manners with me? Are you trying to make me laugh to death and inherit my pagoda? Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta said, Xiao Er, I didn't scold you, did I? The door of adversity was expressionless. Can you get lost? Xiao Ta jumped up and down. I won't. Hit me then. The door of adversity stared at Xiao Ta. She did not make a move, because she could not do anything to this stupid pagoda in her current state. In fact, this Xiao Ta was more terrifying than the experts outside. She could kill an Eternal Realm expert in seconds, but she could not do anything to this Xiao Ta. This Xiao Ta was too tough. Only in her normal state could she defeat this Xiao Ta. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Xiao Er, can I ask you a question? The door of adversity looked up. You get lost too. You and this stupid pagoda are both despicable. I don't want to talk to you. Yi Xian was speechless. Beside him, Wan Jun shook her head and smiled. Miss Xiao Er, why must you kill him? Just because he has a disaster body? Yi Xian looked at Wan Jun. Wan Jun had asked exactly what he wanted to ask. This girl knew what he was thinking. Could she be interested in him? Inside the prison pagoda, the door of adversity said calmly, "Isn't that enough?" Won Jun frowned. "Then you're too overbearing." The door of adversity looked up and sneered. "Overbearing? Are you joking? Do you know why he has a disaster body?" Won Jun shook her head. "I don't." The door of adversity said coldly, "There are 3 reasons. First, he himself. Second, his father. Third, his sister." Yi Xian was confused. "What do you mean?" The door of adversity was expressionless. "What do you mean? Do you know how deep the sin your father and your sister committed back then was? Especially when the 2 of them forcefully went against the heavens in order to save some people. They disrupted the laws and order of the universe, causing cracks to appear in them. Do you know how serious the consequences were?" Yi Xian frowned. "You can just look for them for what they did." "Why did they bully me?" "Don't tell me they're just bullying the weak and fearing the strong." The door of adversity said angrily, "Do you think you're innocent?" Yi Xian said angrily, "Of course I'm innocent. I'm the scapegoat. Who else would I be innocent if not?" The door of adversity's voice suddenly grew louder. "Innocent my ass. It's all your own doing. Innocent my ass." Yi Xian was confused. "What do you mean by myself?" The door of adversity's expression was extremely cold. "Do you know who you are?" Yi Xian said, "I'm Yi Xian." The door of adversity shook its head. "I'm speechless." Yi Xian was speechless. The door of adversity said again, "You're that woman's brother, but do you know what your past life was like?" "You definitely don't know, because none of us know." Yi Xian blinked in disbelief. "What the heck? You mean to say that the life in which I was Qing Er's brother's brother wasn't simple?" The door of adversity fell silent for a moment before saying, "From what we know, you've been going against the heavens since the beginning. There was a period of time when the reincarnation laws were disrupted. It was also because of that time that the reincarnation laws were heavily injured. According to our calculations, it was definitely your doing. However, we don't know who you were in your past life. We only know that mysterious person was the first person to break the laws and reincarnate." Yi Xian said excitedly, "So you're saying that my past life was a superpower?" The door of adversity was expressionless. "Why? You seem very happy." Yi Xian was about to speak when the door of adversity said angrily, "You're a pig." That person reincarnated, but it wasn't a true reincarnation. His body, soul, and memories were reincarnated together. Simply put, you were a sacrifice chosen by him. Once he regained his memories, you would cease to exist. Unfortunately, he reincarnated and became that woman's brother. Furthermore, he was unlucky and died before he regained his memories. Most importantly, that woman woke up. Did you know? After that woman woke up, she defied the heavens again and disrupted the reincarnation laws to forcefully change your fate." Yi Xian was silent for a moment before saying, "The mysterious person you mentioned, has he already reincarnated?" The door of adversity said, "No. He's still you." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Isn't he dead?" The door of adversity said angrily, "In that life, that woman in a plain dress forcefully defied the heavens. She forcefully entered the reincarnation cycle to save you. Not only that, but she also defied the laws of life to forcefully extend your life. She saved you, which was equivalent to saving the mysterious person who reincarnated into your body. However, she was very impressive. She stopped that person from awakening. She forcefully stopped that person from awakening. Otherwise, you would have been long gone." Yi Xian was speechless. The door of adversity said, "Your entire family is perverted. That green-robed man also defied the heavens and forcefully entered the reincarnation cycle to save someone. That woman is also. Do you know? The reincarnation laws were seriously injured and unconscious by your family. she's really pitiful. It's because of her coma that countless experts in the universe are able to reincarnate with their memories. In the past, this would have been impossible. One life is one life. If a person's life reaches its end, it's the end. It's impossible for them to reincarnate with their memories. However, as the reincarnation laws went into hibernation, the world was in chaos. This is all your family's doing. Yi Xian was speechless. The door of adversity was furious. It said, it's fine if she defied the reincarnation laws. That woman also defied the laws of life, time, cause and effect, and fate. In order to save you, she defied almost all the laws except the number one law. Moreover, she continues to defy them. If she continues to defy them, the order of the universe will be gone. Once all living beings are free from the restrictions of these laws, many people will be able to live forever and reincarnate with their memories. Do you know how terrifying that is? At this point, she paused and said, Big brother, if you still have a conscience, kill yourself. If you continue to play like this, you won't be able to take it anymore. Yi Xian was speechless. The door of adversity said, that's not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing is that she's looking for the laws of the universe everywhere. Not only does she want to defy them, but she also wants to kill us. This is 2F** King unreasonable. P.S. To explain again, every update is reviewed, so it might be a few minutes late. Everyone, please forgive me. It's really not that I woke up late, it's that I'm late. This time, I'm telling the truth. Lastly, I've been working hard to save up my manuscripts. Wait for my next explosion. Chapter 1535. There was no justice in this world. The door of adversity was feeling extremely aggrieved. The universal law could be said to be the justice of the universe. Now, this family was defying the heavens. Not only did they want to defy the heavens, but they also wanted to kill them. There was no justice in this world. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, Xiao Er, don't make it sound so aggrieved. Back then, it was you who wanted to kill the young master without asking the reason. That's why that woman was angry. If it wasn't for that woman and master's strength, the young master would have been killed by you. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He naturally wouldn't sympathize with the door of adversity. Just like what Xiao Ta said, if it wasn't for Qing Er, he would have been dead. At that time, who would sympathize with him? The door of adversity suddenly said, he is the source of all misfortune. As long as he doesn't die, this matter will not end. Xiao Ta angrily scolded, you stupid door. If the young master dies, that sister Tian Ming will go crazy. Once she goes crazy, forget about you, even master and that swordsman won't be able to stop her. At that time, everyone will die. The door of adversity coldly looked at Xiao Ta. Since ancient times, no one has ever been truly undefeatable. Xiao Ta angrily jumped up, idiot. It knew how terrifying that woman was. She was a woman who was even scarier than its master when she went crazy. Under normal circumstances, its master wouldn't act recklessly, but that woman could at any time. Moreover, in that woman's eyes, other than her brother, everyone else was no different from a dead person. Among the three swords, she was the most indifferent to life. Within the tower, the door of adversity slowly closed its eyes. Although it had never come into direct contact with the plain-clothed woman, it knew that she was very strong. If she wasn't strong, the adversity law wouldn't have personally appeared to lure her away. Not only the plain-clothed woman, but the swordsman she met was also very strong. She had never seen such a strong swordsman. However, the Cosmos God Court had no way out. Just like in the secular world, when someone rebelled, did the emperor have a way out? The ministers could surrender, but could the emperor surrender? In space, Yi Xian was silent. From adversity's mouth, he learned many, many things. He had to admit that he was feeling very complicated at the moment. He suddenly realized that Qing Er had done a lot for him, but Qing'er had never told him about it. Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. A complicated look flashed across his eyes. Qing'er. Can you hear me? In a certain unknown starry sky, the entire starry sky was blood red, and in the depths of that starry sky, there was an endless bridge. Upon closer inspection, the entire bridge was made of bones. Below the bridge was a sea of blood. A bridge of bones. Blood as the sea. On the bridge, a woman was walking slowly. It was the plain-dressed woman. As if sensing something, the woman in the simple dress suddenly stopped. She tilted her head slightly, and a moment later, the corners of her mouth curled up. This smile caused the starry sky to lose its color. At this moment, the sea of blood under the bridge suddenly trembled. Not long after, the sea of blood began to squirm. Gradually, the blood began to gather on the bridge. After several breaths of time, a bloodied man appeared in front of the plain-dressed woman. Below the bridge, the sea of blood had disappeared. In between the bloodied man's eyebrows, there was a small black word, prisoner. The bloodied man took a deep breath and said greedily, "The taste of freedom is so good." The plain-dressed woman looked at the bloodied man and did not speak. Instead, she continued to move forward. The bloodied man looked at the plain-dressed woman and smiled. "I've been imprisoned for 1,000,000 years, and that woman said that as long as I kill you, I can regain my true freedom and leave this boundless godly penitentiary. I know that you're very strong and killing you is very difficult. However, no matter how difficult it is, it's not as difficult as defying the heavens, right?" The plain-dressed woman stopped and looked at the bloodied man. "Defying the heavens, there's still a chance of survival." "Defying me?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly drew her sword and slashed. Chi! Before the bloodied man could react, a ray of sword light had already pierced through his eyebrows. At this moment, the plain-dressed woman was already behind him. The plain-dressed woman sheathed her sword and her lips curled into a mocking smile. "What is the heavens? Can you take a strike from me?" As she spoke, she continued to walk into the distance. On the bridge, the bloodied man stared blankly at the distant starry sky. "Imprisoned for 1,000,000 years, died as soon as I came out. I didn't even report my name." As soon as he finished speaking, he dispersed like a wisp of green smoke with the wind. He was directly erased. Nether River Galaxy. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze. Right now, he really wanted to see Qing'er. However, he also knew that his current strength was still too weak. Strength. Yi Xian glanced at the sword in his hand. Right now, his top priority was to reach the level of a common sword. Wan Jun suddenly said, "We're almost there." Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and looked into the distant starry sky. He was a little curious. Why did the green-dressed man attack in that place? What would be in the box that the little white guy buried there? Yi Xian and Wan Jun began to quicken their pace. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly floated to Yi Xian's shoulder and gently rubbed it against Yi Xian's shoulder. "Young master, let's fuse." Yi Xian glanced at Xiao Ta and smiled. "Why?" Xiao Ta said, "If we fuse, you will be able to unleash my full power. Then, we will be able to break that broken door." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. This guy was going against the door of disaster. Xiao Ta said again, "Fuse? If you are willing to fuse with me, I can give you many treasures left behind by my master." "Right. And Arya's blood, the blood left behind after she was beaten, can help you improve your physical body." Blood. Yi Xian was instantly tempted. The little girl with the horn on her head was very terrifying. If he used her blood to rebuild his physical body, he would at least be at the consolidation realm. Or even the eternal realm. Yi Xian was a little excited. Xiao Ta continued to tempt him. "Young master, as long as you agree, I can give you many, many treasures." Yi Xian shook his head. "Not now." Xiao Ta was a little confused. "Why?" Yi Xian smiled. "Because I want to reach the mortal sword level." It was not easy for him to not rely on external objects. How could he easily use them again? He knew that if he reached the Eternal Realm and unsealed 2 of his bloodlines, his combat power would be very terrifying. Forget about everything else, even Wan Jun would not be a match for him. Under those circumstances, Eternal Realm would be like ants in front of him. However, he really did not want to rely on external objects. At least before reaching the mortal sword level, he would not use any external objects. Xiao Ta sighed softly. Yi Xian smiled, it's fine. Once I reach the mortal sword level, we will work together to defeat her. Inside the prison pagoda, the door of disaster sneered, defeat me? Is there a need for you to be so shameless? Yi Xian, at this moment, Wan Jun suddenly said, we're here. Saying so, she stopped. Yi Xian also stopped. He looked into the distance, and at the end of his vision, in the depths of the starry sky, there was a huge abyss. The sword abyss. This sword abyss was really big, and standing in front of it was like an ant standing in front of a bathtub. They were very far away from the sword abyss, but Yi Xian could feel an extremely powerful sword Dao will. This sword Dao will was extremely violent, and it exuded a vicious aura. Moreover, he was slightly surprised because this sword Dao will seemed slightly familiar to him. At this moment, the door of disaster appeared next to Yi Xian. She looked into the distance and frowned. Yi Xian glanced at the door of disaster. Why did you come out? The door of disaster looked coldly at Yi Xian. Are you not convinced? If you are not convinced, fight me. The kind that doesn't call people. Yi Xian, Wan Jun suddenly said, Miss, what do you think of this sword Dao will? The door of disaster looked coldly at the sword abyss, and did not speak. Wan Jun did not ask any more questions, and looked at Yi Xian, let's go. Yi Xian nodded. The two continued forward, and before long, Wan Jun's expression gradually became solemn. This sword Dao will was too powerful. It was like a mountain was pressing down on her, and the further they went, the stronger the pressure. Wan Jun was very shocked. She was a peak Eternal Realm expert, but at this moment, she was being suppressed by a sword Dao will, and this sword Dao will had existed for many years. Just how strong was the owner of this sword Dao will? As if thinking of something, Wan Jun looked at the door of disaster, and the door of disaster seemed to be affected as well, frowning slightly. Just like that, the 3 of them walked for about 3,000 feet, and they had reached the edge of the sword abyss. At this moment, Wan Jun's face was already dripping with cold sweat, and her footsteps felt like they were weighed down by 1,000 kilograms, and every step was extremely strenuous. Moreover, the hostility in the sword Dao will was becoming more and more terrifying, and if not for her strong will, she would have been corroded by the hostility. The frown on the Misfortune Gate's brows grew deeper and deeper, but there was a peculiar glint in the depths of her eyes. This wisp of sword chi was very strong. If they used it well, they might be able to kill this guy. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, you seem to be having a hard time. Hearing this, the 2 women turned to look at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian looked relaxed, as if nothing had happened. Wan Jun was confused. How is this possible? Yi Xian blinked, I feel fine. Wan Jun frowned slightly, can't you feel that sword Dao will? Yi Xian said, yes. Hua Jun was shocked. Then why are you still so relaxed? Yi Xian was a little puzzled. It's very easy. Why do you look like you're having a hard time? Just as La Jun was about to speak, Xiao Ta's voice suddenly rang out, of course young master feels relaxed. Because this sword will was left behind by the master, how could it dare to be impudent in front of the young master? Young master, I just received a message from this sword will. It said it wants to go with you. What do you think? Yi Xian blinked. Come with me? Xiao Ta said, yes, it said it wants to go with you. Please accept it, it can help you fight. Wan Jun, at the side, the door of disaster's expression became extremely ugly. As if she couldn't take it anymore, she suddenly swung her hand. Motherf *Ker. I'm not playing anymore. Boom. In the distance, a part of the starry sky was annihilated. She returned to the prison pagoda. Chapter 1536. Yi Xian ignored the door of disaster and looked into the distance. At that moment, they were about to enter the sword abyss. He could feel the sword Dao will, but unlike Wan Jun, he did not feel any pressure. On the contrary, he felt a sense of familiarity with the sword Dao will. Yi Xian's eyes gradually became blank. A strand of sword Dao will, even after tens of thousands of years, could still exert pressure on a powerhouse like the door of disaster. How terrifying was that? That was just a strand of sword Dao will. Moreover, it was definitely not intentional by the green-robed man. It might have been left behind by accident. What level had the green-robed man reached? What was a swordsman? This was a swordsman. A strand of sword Dao will not be extinguished even after tens of thousands of years. Yi Xian looked at the sword in his hand and shook his head with a smile. The path of sword Dao was endless. Becoming mortal was probably just the beginning. At this thought, Yi Xian's eyes were no longer blank. He looked into the sword abyss in the distance again and smiled. Let's go, Wan Jun. Wan Jun nodded. The two of them continued forward. After 2 steps, Yi Xian found that Wan Jun was getting more and more strained. He hesitated for a moment and then grabbed Wan Jun's hand. With this pull, Wan Jun felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her body. The oppressive force of the sword Dao will actually disappeared. Wan Jun turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. I didn't mean to take advantage of her. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young master, just use your sword Dao or sword domain to envelop Sister Wan Jun. Yi Xian's face was expressionless. He said in his heart, Shut up. Xiao Ta jumped up and down. Young master, I understand now. You wanted to hold Sister Wan Jun's hand on purpose. You're such a pervert. Yi Xian was speechless. Beside him, Wan Jun looked calm because she had heard Xiao Ta's words. Yi Xian smiled. Xiao Ta is naughty and likes to talk nonsense. Don't mind him. Xiao Ta, is it the tower that's mischievous, or the person that's mischievous? Yi Xian blushed with shame and was about to let go of Wan Jun's hand, but Wan Jun grabbed his hand instead. Hua Jun faced Yi Xian. It's just holding hands. It's not like we're sleeping. It's no big deal. Yi Xian was speechless. The two of them no longer bothered about holding hands. Soon, they entered the sword abyss. This sword abyss was originally a world, but this world had been completely erased by a single sword strike. Even the laws of the universe couldn't restore it. The sword abyss was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. After entering, the entire abyss made one involuntarily fearful. Yi Xian was fine. He was not afraid of this place at all. After all, the sword will here had already submitted. What was there to be afraid of? The two of them continued forward. As they walked, Hua Jun's expression became more and more solemn. Because the deeper she went, the stronger the will of the sword Dao grew. Fortunately, the will of the sword Dao didn't target her again. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to reach this place. Not long after, Yi Xian and Hua Jun suddenly stopped. An old man's corpse was floating not far in front of them. Hua Jun frowned slightly at the sight of the corpse. Yi Xian asked, Do you know him? Hua Jun said solemnly, This was an elder of my Tian family. He came here with my father and second uncle. As she spoke, she pulled Yi Xian over to the old man's corpse. After looking at it for a moment, her expression became even more gloomy. He was killed by someone. Yi Xian glanced at the old man. Just as Hua Jun had said, he was indeed killed by someone. Hua Jun suddenly walked into the distance. Yi Xian hurriedly followed. Hua Jun quickened her pace. Yi Xian glanced at Huajun but didn't say a word. About an hour later, the two of them stopped again. A middle-aged man's corpse was floating hundreds of feet in front of them. From the looks of it, he bore some resemblance to Huajun. However, there was no longer a soul in the middle-aged man's body. His soul had truly been extinguished. Looking at the corpse, Huajun was completely dumbfounded. Gradually, two streams of clear liquid flowed out of her eyes. Yi Xian sighed inwardly. This Miss Huajun was also a person with a bitter life. Her father was killed, she was imprisoned, and her entire family was slaughtered. If it were him, he would definitely slaughter the entire Tian family. At this moment, Huajun put away the middle-aged man's corpse and turned to Yi Xian. "Let's go." Yi Xian nodded. The two of them continued forward. Huajun didn't say a word along the way. Although the sword intent was getting stronger, the two of them weren't affected in the slightest. At this moment, Huajun suddenly said, "I want to go back and become the Tian family's patriarch." Yi Xian looked at Huajun. "I support you." Huajun turned to Yi Xian. "Aren't you going to ask why?" Yi Xian smiled. "Why?" Huajun shook her head. Her expression was complicated. She paused before continuing, "The Tian family is my father's life's work. If he was still alive, he definitely wouldn't let the Tian family become a cold-blooded family. Therefore, I want to go back and become the patriarch. I want to change the Tian family so that the tragedy of my family will never happen again." Yi Xian nodded. "That's fine. However, Huajun, you need to understand one thing. If you don't have enough strength, I'm afraid you won't be able to truly subdue the Tian family." Huajun nodded slightly. "I understand." Saying this, she turned to Yi Xian. "After leaving this place, what are your plans?" Yi Xian thought about it and said, "I want to go back to the fifth dimension." He had been out for a long time. Sister Nian and the others must be worried. Huajun asked, "Is the fifth dimension very far from here?" Yi Xian nodded. "Very far. If it wasn't for the door of disaster tearing through the star field, he wouldn't have been able to come to the Nether River star field." Huajun suddenly said, "You need to be careful of the door of disaster." Yi Xian nodded. "I know. The door of disaster." Swordsman couldn't follow him forever. He still had to face the cause of disaster. Mortal Sword. Now, he urgently wanted to reach Mortal Sword. Only by reaching Mortal Sword could he barely contend with the Adept of Disaster. The reason why this woman was so low-key was because of Swordsman. Once Swordsman left, the door would definitely flip out. The two continued to move forward. At this moment, they were already deep into the sword abyss. Yi Xian could feel the sword Dao's will. He was looking forward to that little white guy's box. That little guy was weird. It must have contained some good treasure. About an hour later, Yi Xian and Huajun arrived at the deepest part of the sword abyss. When they reached the deepest part of the sword abyss, they were stunned. This was because they saw an old man in the deepest part of the sword abyss. There was a living person here. The old man wore a loose black robe. His hands were hidden in his sleeves, and his aura was as deep as the sea. At this moment, the old man was also looking at Yi Xian and Huajun. There was a trace of shock in his eyes. Obviously, he didn't expect someone to be able to reach this place. Huajun suddenly said, "Li Jueqing." The old man looked at Huajun, a trace of surprise flashing in his eyes. "Little girl, you know me?" Huajun looked at the old man with a solemn expression. "You really are Li Jueqing." The old man nodded. "Little girl, you are?" Yi Xian also looked at Huajun. Huajun said solemnly, "He's the former sect leader of Glory Sect. He's currently recognized as the strongest person in Styx sector. If it weren't for fear of him, the Tian family would have destroyed Glory Sect back then." The strongest person. Yi Xian looked at Li Jueqing. No wonder this guy could carry the sword Dao's will all the way here. He's not simple. At this moment, Li Jueqing suddenly said, "You're that little girl from the Tian family." Huajun nodded. Li Jueqing smiled. Not bad. As he said that, he looked at Yi Xian. This little friend is? Yi Xian cupped his fists. Yi Xian. I'm from the five-dimensional universe. Li Jueqing's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. The five-dimensional universe. As far as I know, it's very far from here. How did you get here? Yi Xian said, I came from the same gate. The gate of disaster was speechless. Li Jueqing sized up Yi Xian. A trace of shock flashed in the depths of his eyes. Adversity constitution. Young man, you're not simple. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, what are you doing here? Li Jueqing smiled. Rumor has it that a peerless swordsman once appeared here. Therefore, I wanted to pay my respects to that senior. Yi Xian asked, what does senior think of that swordsman? Li Jueqing looked around and said softly, a wisp of sword Dao will can stop me. I'm far from that. As he said that, he seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Little friend, with your strength, you shouldn't be able to reach here. Why did you? Yi Xian blinked. Is this sword Dao will very strong? Li Jueqing was stunned. Then, he asked, not strong? Yi Xian said seriously, it's just a so-so. Li Jueqing was speechless. Yi Xian cupped his fists. Senior, we're going. Goodbye. As he said that, he took Huajun and walked into the distance. Li Jueqing quickly said, little friend, wait. Yi Xian looked at Li Jueqing. Li Jueqing said in a deep voice, little friend, the area ahead not only has a strong sword Dao will, but also some remnant sword qi. These sword qi are extremely strong. If you're not careful, your soul will be destroyed. Little friend, you must not underestimate it. Remnant sword qi. Yi Xian looked in front of him. As expected, there was sword qi in the area ahead. Moreover, there was a lot of it. These sword qi were remnant sword qi. This sword qi was much stronger than Tingyun's sword qi back then. Yi Xian glanced at Li Jueqing. Senior, the reason why you stayed here is because of these sword qi? Li Jueqing nodded. Yes. Yi Xian smiled. It's just sword qi. It's not enough. As he said that, he took Huajun and walked into the distance. When he walked to the sword qi area, he suddenly shouted, how dare you act rashly in front of me, a swordsman? Back off. As soon as he said that, the sword qi in front of him retreated to both sides in an orderly manner. Not only that, but the sword Dao will also retreated like the tide. Seeing this scene, Li Jueqing, who was in the distance, was dumbfounded. He was extremely shocked. Which big shot is pretending to be weak? Inside the prison pagoda, Xiao Ta said awkwardly, little lord's pretentious act. Even I feel awkward. On the 9th floor, the door of disaster turned to face the tower wall and slammed its head against it. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. Let me die. P.S. The physical books have arrived, including Invincible Sword Realm and The Only Sword. I'm going to hold a small event soon. Everyone can follow my WeChat account, on the Green Phoenix Peak. He directly searched the official WeChat account, Qinghuan Peak. All he had to do was click on the follow button. Chapter 1537. Needless to say, Li Jueqing was extremely shocked right now. The area that Yi Xian had stepped foot into was an area that he didn't dare step foot into in the past. Because the sword Dao intent and remnant sword qi in that area were truly too formidable. However, this young man before him was actually able to make the sword qi and sword Dao intent retreat. This wasn't a matter of strength anymore. Because he was able to sense that the young man before him wasn't particularly strong. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for the young man to arrive here. However, the young man hadn't just arrived here, he'd even made the remnant sword chi and sword Dao intent retreat with a single shout. There was only one explanation, and it was that the young man was actually a big shot. An extraordinary big shot. There was nothing wrong with such an analysis. Yi Xian suddenly stopped not too far away, and then he turned around to look at Li Jueqing. Senior, do you want to go ahead and have a look? Li Jueqing hesitated for a moment before he said, I'm not worthy of being called a senior. If you don't mind, you can call me Big Brother Li. We'll talk as equals. Wan Jun had a slightly strange expression on her face. Li Jueqing wasn't an ordinary person. He was the #1 extraordinary expert of the current era, and it could be said that even her father couldn't compare to him. Yet at this moment, such an extraordinary expert actually wanted to talk to Yi Xian as equals. It wasn't that Yi Xian wasn't worthy, it was mainly because it was slightly strange. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he smiled, then I won't be unreasonable. Big Brother Li, are you interested in going in with us? Li Jueqing smiled, of course I'm interested in your invitation. Yi Xian smiled, then let's go. As he spoke, he pulled Wan Jun along as he walked towards the distance. Li Jueqing followed them as well. Because of Yi Xian, the remnant sword chi and sword Dao intent didn't target Li Jueqing. Li Jueqing was even more shocked when he witnessed this scene. He really is a big shot. Yi Xian's group of 3 walked towards the depths of the sword abyss. All along the way, the remnant sword chi and sword intent retreated wherever Yi Xian passed. However, they didn't retreat far. They just waited at the side, as if they were waiting for something. Not long after, Yi Xian, who was in the lead, stopped. Not far away from the 3 of them, there was a man sitting cross-legged. The man's hair was disheveled, and his face could not be seen. A will floated above the man's head. Sword Dao will. Yi Xian and the other 2 looked at each other with a trace of shock in their eyes. This man was actually alive. At this moment, the man slowly raised his head and looked at Yi Xian and the others in the distance. When he saw Yi Xian, his pupils dilated. It's you, Yi Xian blinked. What do you mean by me? The man said in a trembling voice, Bloodline, your bloodline. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Did this guy think he was the man in the green robe? Are you imprisoned here? Wan Jun suddenly asked. The man nodded. He glanced at Yi Xian and said, You're not him. But you share the same bloodline. Yi Xian glanced at the man. Why aren't you imprisoned here? The man fell silent. Yi Xian smiled. Fine. It has nothing to do with me anyway. As soon as he finished speaking, his eyes lit up. There was a box not too far away from the man. A box. Yi Xian walked over to the box. There were 2 candied haws on the box. Needless to say, it must have been left behind by that white kid. Yi Xian picked up the box. He opened it and glanced at it, but he quickly closed it again. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. Yi Xian put the box away, and then he looked at Wan Jun. Let's go. Wan Jun glanced at Yi Xian, but she didn't ask anything. Yi Xian immediately put the box away. Obviously, he didn't want others to know what was inside it. Right at this moment, the man at the side suddenly said, Sir, please wait. Yi Xian turned to look at the man. The man hesitated for a moment before he said, Sir, can you let me go? Yi Xian shook his head. No. The man looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, The green-clothed man imprisoned you here. Needless to say, you must have done something to infuriate him. The man said angrily, I was dragged into this. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Dragged into this? The man suddenly became slightly agitated. Big brother, think about it. He's so strong that he could kill me with a single glance. Is it really necessary for him to imprison me here? Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Then why are you imprisoned here? The man sighed softly. I was just unlucky. There was a huge commotion here all those years ago, and I rushed here out of curiosity. As soon as I arrived, this place was transformed into an abyss before I could even figure out what was going on. Moreover, my body was blasted into pieces by a strand of remnant sword intent. As he spoke, he suddenly slapped himself. I was stupid. What the hell was I doing here? The expressions of Yi Xian and the others became slightly strange. The man smiled bitterly. I'm just too unlucky. I really just came here to watch. I didn't do anything. I really didn't do anything. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Since the green-clothed man didn't target you, then why didn't you leave? The man's smile became even more bitter. Big brother, look around me. There's remnant sword intent and sword chi everywhere. I don't dare to move. I really don't dare to move. If I move, the remnant sword chi will kill me. Do you know how I've lived for the past tens of thousands of years? I've been pretending to be dead every single day for the past tens of thousands of years. Only by pretending to be dead can the sword chi not target me. It's too fucking hard. At this point, the man's voice was already sobbing. Yi Xian, beside him, Pejuan shook his head. You too. Why did you come here to watch the show? The man shook his head repeatedly. Who knew that Swordsman would be so terrifying? If I'd known he was so terrifying, I wouldn't have come even if you beat me to death. Pejuan, Yi Xian suddenly asked, you can't beat the sword chi? The man looked at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a moment before saying, I can't beat it. Yi Xian was slightly surprised. It's just some remnant sword chi. You can't even beat it? The man's expression became slightly unnatural. Do you think these sword chi are very weak? Yi Xian opened his palm. Some sword chi floated directly in front of him. He directly grabbed the sword chi. The sword chi didn't resist at all. Seeing this scene, the man became dumbfounded. This, Yi Xian said, I think these sword chi are quite tame. The man hesitated for a moment. He opened his palm, but just as he moved, a wisp of sword chi directly pierced through his arm. Swoosh! The man's arm was cut off. The man was shocked. He immediately did not dare to move. He looked at Yi Xian in a daze. Where did I go wrong? Yi Xian was about to speak. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. Where did I go wrong? You idiot. This sword chi is on his side. Can't you tell? How dare you ask where I went wrong? If there's a mistake, then there's something wrong with your brain. The voice of the door of woe disaster. Hearing this, the man immediately flew into a rage. Who is it? At this moment, the door of woe disaster appeared next to Yi Xian. She looked coldly at the man. You're not convinced? When the man saw the door of woe disaster, he was stunned at first. Then, he hurriedly shook his head. No. I'm convinced, she confirmed with her eyes that it was someone she could not beat. The door of woe disaster glanced coldly at the man, and then she turned around and vanished. Li Jueqing's expression had unknowingly become solemn. The door of woe disaster. As soon as this woman appeared, she gave him a feeling of extreme danger. Li Jueqing glanced at Yi Xian. His background really isn't simple. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly gestured with his right hand. The remaining sword chi in the surroundings suddenly surged towards him like a tide. Moreover, the will of the sword Dao entered his body as well. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the remaining sword chi swiftly converged at the center of his palm. A sword of energy gradually appeared there. It was a sword condensed from the man's sword chi. Li Jueqing's expression became solemn once more when he saw the sword of energy, and there was even a trace of fear in the depths of his eyes. Yi Xian gazed at the sword of energy in his hand. Needless to say, the sword of energy was very strong. However, it could only be used once because the remaining sword chi had been separated from its owner for too long. If he used it, the sword chi would exhaust the last of its energy. However, if he didn't use it, the sword chi could continue existing for over 100,000 years without any external interference. Simply speaking, he was unable to regenerate the sword chi because he wasn't the man in green. After Yi Xian put away the sword chi and sword Dao's will, the man instantly regained his freedom. He stood up and took a deep breath greedily. As if he'd thought of something, he suddenly looked at Yi Xian and cupped his fists. "Thank you, brother. I'm Shiman. May I know your name?" Yi Xian smiled. "Yi Xian." Shiman smiled. "I can't thank you with words. Brother Yi, if you need anything in the future, just send someone to the dark world to notify me. No matter how far it is, I'll definitely rush over." At this moment, Li Jueqing suddenly asked, "You're from the dark world?" Shiman looked at Li Jueqing and nodded, "Yes." Li Jueqing glanced at Shiman and didn't say anything else. Shiman looked at Yi Xian and cupped his fists. "Brother Yi, I've just gotten out of trouble. I miss my family, so I have to go back. Please come to the dark world in the future." Yi Xian smiled. "If there's a chance, I'll definitely come." Shiman nodded. "Brother Yi, farewell." After saying that, he turned and disappeared into the end of the starry sky. Yi Xian suddenly sighed in a low voice after the west gate had disappeared. Wan Jun looked at Yi Xian. "What are you sighing about?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I'm not used to it." Wan Jun was puzzled. "What are you not used to?" Yi Xian sighed softly. "After my big brother suppressed the cause of calamity, I've only made good karma up until now. Most importantly, the experts I've met are getting smarter. They don't do anything stupid to me anymore. To be honest, I'm not used to it." As he said that, he patted his abdomen. "Little misfortune, give me some cause of calamity." In the prison pagoda, the door of calamity suddenly roared, "Bitch, do you dare to let your big brother go? Do you dare? Ah. FPZW." Chapter 1538. In the 9th floor, the adversity karma was so angry that she was about to go crazy. She really wanted to go out and beat this pretentious prick up. But there was no other way. Because that swordsman had always been there. If she attacked, that swordsman might just stab her with his sword. She couldn't fight him, so could she just watch him act like a prick? She wanted to go out and perish together with Yi Xian. She couldn't take it anymore. In the sword abyss, Yi Xian said, "Little adversity. Don't be so agitated. I'm just feeling a little emotional. But honestly, without your interference, I don't think my life is that bad." In the prison pagoda, the adversity gate took a deep breath. She tried her best to calm herself down. She couldn't be angry. She couldn't be angered to death by this guy. Otherwise, it would be too much of a loss. Seeing that the adversity gate didn't say anything, Yi Xian was about to ask again, but the adversity gate suddenly said, "Do you really think that we would interfere with you for no reason? Do you know what karma is? Without karma, how can there be karma? The reason why you're plagued by misfortune is because of your own sins, your father, and your sister. Especially your sister, she forcefully went against the heavens to save you. That's one of the karma." Yi Xian said with a smile, "According to what you're saying, should die?" The adversity gate said coldly, "Why can't you die?" Yi Xian asked back, "Why should our fates be decided by you?" The adversity gate said, "If there's no order in this universe, do you know what will happen?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Don't you care about fairness in your order?" The adversity gate asked back, "Why do you think that we're unfair to you?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "You told me that someone disrupted the law of reincarnation and reincarnated into my previous life, which was Qing Er's brother's life. Let me ask you, was I Qing Er's brother or that mysterious person in my previous life? The adversity gate was silent. Yi Xian continued, if I'm not mistaken, before that person awakened, I should have been Qing Er's brother, right? Since I'm not that mysterious person, why should I die? Is this fair to me? The gate of disaster said in a deep voice, if you die in that life, you will bring that mysterious person with you. If that person dies, the world will regain its order. Yi Xian smiled and said, according to what you said, the one who really broke the order is that mysterious person, right? The door of disaster did not speak again. Because as Yi Xian had said, the first person to defy the laws of the universe was that mysterious man. The woman in the plain dress didn't dare to forcefully sever her karma until now because of that mysterious person. She was afraid that it would bring bad consequences to Yi Xian. Yi Xian continued, to put it simply, the mysterious man was the one who broke the order. But in order to get rid of future troubles, you decided to kill me, right? The gate of woeful disaster said, don't lead me astray. I've said it before. Other than that mysterious person, there's another reason why you're plagued by misfortune. It's because of your father and your sister, especially your sister. In order to save you, she forcefully defied the laws of the universe and disregarded the order of the laws of the universe. This is also one of the main reasons why you're plagued by misfortune. Yi Xian was confused. Qing Er defied the laws of the universe. Why don't you look for Qing Er? The gate of woeful disaster said angrily, she's already free from all karma. How are we supposed to look for her? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. So you came to look for me? The gate of woeful disaster asked, is there a problem? Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then smiled and said, no problem. What Qing Er did is what I did. It's only right that you come to look for me. There's nothing wrong with that. The gate of woeful disaster said coldly, I've known you for so long, but this is the first time you've said something sensible. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Wan Jun suddenly said, are we leaving? Yi Xian collected his thoughts and nodded. Let's go. After saying that, he looked at Li Jueqing. Brotherly, what about you? Li Jueqing smiled. Of course I'm leaving too. Yi Xian smiled. Then let's go. The three of them left the sword abyss. Yi Xian turned to look at the sword abyss. He was still a little curious. Why did the green-robed man use that sword? However, this was no longer important. Because that was already history. Wan Jun suddenly said, I'm going back to the Tian family. As she said that, she looked at Yi Xian. What about you? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, I'm going back to the great desolate mountain range. I promised Swordsman that I would leave from there. This is my promise with him. Wan Jun hesitated for a moment, then said, after that, will you return to the fifth dimension? Yi Xian nodded. That's the plan for the time being. After a moment of silence, Wan Jun said, some people disappear while walking. Am I that kind of person in your life? Yi Xian looked at Wan Jun and was stunned. Wan Jun smiled. That's a bit pretentious. No matter what, getting to know you is the most meaningful thing in my life. If you don't come looking for me, I will come looking for you. We'll meet again someday. After saying that, she directly turned around and disappeared at the end of the horizon. Yi Xian looked at the horizon in silence. Xiao Ta's voice suddenly sounded. Young master, Sister Wan Jun seems to like you. Yi Xian chuckled. She might be grateful to me. Xiao Ta said, no. Based on my many years of experience, Sister Wan Jun likes you. Yi Xian blinked. Your many years of experience? Are you very experienced? Xiao Ta said, of course, Master was very affectionate in the past. Compared to Master, young Master is too naive. Master is a real stallion. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta said again, young Master, Master often said that it's okay to be affectionate, but not promiscuous. So, if you really like her, then go chase her. What's there to be afraid of? Isn't it too embarrassing if a man doesn't have dozens of women? If I were a human, would find hundreds of women. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Xiao Ta still wanted to say something, but the door of disaster suddenly rushed out of the 9th floor. Then, a series of explosions came from the entire prison pagoda. They were fighting again. More accurately, Xiao Ta was being beaten. Before merging with a human, Xiao Ta's ability was limited. At this time, Li Jiqing suddenly said, "Young friend, if you have time in the future, please come to my glory sect as a guest." Yi Xian looked at Li Jiqing and smiled. "Old brother Li, I will definitely come and disturb you." Li Jiqing smiled. Today, meeting young friend, made the old man understand one thing, and that is that there is always someone better. The path of martial arts has no end. Young friend, when you reach the common sword realm, please come to the glory sect and we will exchange pointers. Yi Xian blinked. Can I do it now? Li Jiqing laughed. Young friend, your current strength is still not enough. Young friend, I will wait for you at the glory sect. With that, he disappeared into the sky. Yi Xian looked at Li Jiqing in the sky and smiled. He knew that Li Jiqing was not lying. Li Jiqing was much stronger than Wan Jun. Back in Sword Abyss, if not for him, Wan Jun would not have been able to enter Sword Abyss. Old brother Li had entered the deepest part of Sword Abyss. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian turned around and left. To the great desolate mountain range. To the great desolate mountain range again. Not long after Yi Xian left, the white-armored woman appeared. The white-armored woman looked at Yi Xian leaving in the distance. No one knew what she was thinking. Not long after, Yi Xian arrived at the great desolate mountain range's burial mountain range. He looked at the empty space in front of him. That was the place where Wan Jun was imprisoned. After a moment, Yi Xian smiled and continued forward. After crossing Burial Mountain, Yi Xian came to a mountain range. As soon as he entered the mountain range, 2 middle-aged men appeared in front of him. They were Demon Monarch Guyu and Demon Monarch Mang. Demon Monarch Guyu looked at Yi Xian. Didn't you leave with that woman? They also knew what happened in Burial Mountain. However, it was the Tian family's matter, so they did not dare to chase after them. They did not dare to get involved in the Tian family's vortex. Yi Xian smiled. I'm back. Demon Monarch Guyu frowned. Why are you back? Yi Xian blinked. I have an agreement with my brother. I will rely on my own strength to walk out of this mountain range. Demon Monarch Guyu stared at Yi Xian. Are you sure? Yi Xian nodded. Demon Monarch Guyu said in a deep voice, Human, we know you have a powerful force behind you. We do not wish to provoke you. If you want to walk out of this mountain range, you can just fly over. If you fly over, we can pretend we didn't see you. Yi Xian shook his head. I want to walk over. Demon Monarch Guyu's expression was gloomy. If people outside know that Dao Yi, a human, walked out of this place, we will lose face. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Demon Monarch Meng suddenly said, Human, if you want to walk out of this place, you can, but you have to beat me first. Yi Xian looked at Demon Monarch Meng. Let's fight? Demon Monarch Meng looked at Yi Xian and said coldly, We can fight, but let's make it clear first. You are not allowed to call for help. Only the 2 of us will fight. Whoever calls for help is a dog. Yi Xian nodded. Sure. Demon Monarch Meng snorted coldly. Bring it on. With that said, he suddenly leaped up and punched at Yi Xian. This punch caused the space in front of Yi Xian to distort into a strange vortex. Below, Yi Xian suddenly stabbed out with his sword. Sword of life and death. This sword strike was simple and simple. And it was this simple strike that instantly shattered Demon Monarch Meng's strength. At the same time, his entire body was sent flying tens of thousands of feet away. When he stopped, his body cracked and blood splattered. He was severely injured with a single strike. Demon Monarch Mang and Demon Monarch Guyu were dumbfounded. Demon Monarch Mang looked up at Yi Xian and gulped. How? How is this possible? Did you take some medicine? Yi Xian sighed softly. Don't you understand? You are still within the rules, but I have already jumped out of the rules. With that said, he looked up into the sky with a deep sense of helplessness in his eyes. Invincibility is lonely. Demon Monarch Mang, Demon Monarch Guyu, inside the prison pagoda, the door of calamity sat in a corner and covered its ears with both hands. F***ck, this fellow is here again. He's here again. Ah. I can't take it anymore. P.S. Zongheng is the first website of One Sword Supreme. If everyone wants to see One Sword Supreme's updates immediately, you can come to Zongheng or download the app. Just search for Zongheng and download it. Zongheng will not have any missing chapters or garbled words. Tomorrow, there will be a book giveaway event on the official account and Zongheng's comments section. Free giveaways. Please pay attention to the official account and Zongheng's comments section tomorrow. Especially the active readers of Zongheng's comments section, because some of you are already in my heart. Chapter 1539. Inside the prison pagoda, Xiao Ta hid in a corner. Not to mention the door of calamity, even he felt embarrassed. Forcefully posturing was the most fatal. In the mountain range, Demon Monarch Guyu and Demon Monarch Mount Mang were completely dumbfounded. It was especially so for Demon Monarch Mount Mang. Although he wasn't able to kill Yi Xian not long ago, he wasn't at a disadvantage when fighting Yi Xian. Furthermore, with his powerful body, he had a certain advantage. But now, he was actually forced back by a single strike and his body was directly torn apart. Did this guy take any medicine when he disappeared? Guyu was also extremely shocked. Before this, he was confident that he could suppress Yi Xian. But now, he realized that even he could not withstand Yi Xian's strike, much less Demon Monarch Mount Mang. How did this guy suddenly become so terrifying? The two demon monarchs were dumbfounded. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Demon Monarch Guyu. Make your move. I'll give you 3 punches. Demon Monarch Guyu, Demon Monarch Mount Mang said in a deep voice, Human, how did you suddenly become so strong? Yi Xian smiled. Have you ever seen a monster? If you haven't. With that said, he pointed to himself. Have you seen one now? Demon Monarch Guyu, Demon Monarch Mount Mang stared at Yi Xian, his face as red as a pig's liver. Yi Xian sheathed his sword and walked into the distance. When he walked to Demon Monarch Mount Mang, he suddenly stopped and sighed. Being invincible is really lonely. Mount Mang, can you understand the loneliness of being invincible? Mang Shan felt his chest tighten as he spat out a mouthful of blood essence. The blood in his body nearly reversed. At this moment, Yi Xian had already left. Demon Monarch Mount Mang was about to rush towards Yi Xian. At this moment, he no longer cared about anything. Kill this posturing human. However, he was stopped by Demon Monarch Guyu. Demon King Guyu shook his head. That sword of his has already entered the mortal realm. Our bodies cannot withstand it. Mount Mang glared angrily at Yi Xian's back. Did you see him? It's so demonic. Demon Monarch Guyu looked up at Yi Xian's back and said softly, think about it calmly. This person's strength has undergone an earth-shattering change in such a short period of time. This is terrifying. Upon hearing that, Demon Monarch Mount Mang slowly calmed down. In just a few days, Yi Xian had undergone earth-shattering changes. How terrifying was this? Guyu Demon Monarch continued, and that swordsman has always been in our great desolate mountain range, and we can be sure that he killed Hellion Demon King. As he spoke, he shook his head. To put it simply, this human is not someone we can provoke. Since he was only here to gain experience, then let him gain experience. Anyway, we didn't lose anything. After a moment of silence, Mount Mang said, that purple aura. Guyu Demon Monarch shook his head. That purple aura is not something we can imagine. At this moment, Yi Xian walked back from afar. Seeing this scene, Mount Mang and Guyu Demon Monarch's expressions changed, especially Mount Mang. Although he wanted to kill this pretentious bastard, he had calmed down. Although he disliked this human, he had to admit that he really could not beat this human. Now that he saw Yi Xian return, he panicked a little. Guyu Demon Monarch's eyes were filled with wariness. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm. In his palm, there were 2 dark purple clouds of purple aura. He looked at Guyu Demon Monarch and Mount Mang. You like this? Guyu Demon Monarch glanced at Yi Xian with wariness. What do you mean? Yi Xian smiled. Nothing much. Since you like it, I'll give you some. As he spoke, he pointed with his fingers and the 2 clouds of purple aura floated in front of Guyu Demon Monarch and Mount Mang. The 2 demon monarchs looked at each other in confusion. What was this human doing? Guyu Demon Monarch looked at Yi Xian. Human. Why are you giving us purple aura? Yi Xian laughed. I've disturbed you during my training. Take this purple aura as my apology. Hearing this, Guyu Demon Monarch and Mount Mang looked at each other. At this moment, they suddenly found this human pleasing to the eye. Demon Monarch Guyu and Demon Monarch Mount Mang quietly kept the purple gas. Demon Monarch Guyu cupped his fists and said with a smile, it's not a bother. It's an honor for young Master Yi to come to our great desolate mountain range for training. Mount Mang quickly nodded, yes, yes. Guyu Demon Monarch said, young Master Yi, you said you wanted to leave the great desolate mountain range? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Guyu Demon Monarch quickly said, isn't it simple? Young Master Yi, will send you out. Yi Xian, Mount Mang quickly nodded, yes, yes. Yi Xian shook his head, I promised my brother that I would rely on my own strength to leave. Guyu Demon Monarch smiled, I understand. But young Master Yi, with your current strength, there aren't many demon beasts in the great desolate mountain range that can be your match. How about this, we'll escort you and let you find the stronger demon beast. This way, you won't have to waste time. What do you think? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, that's fine. Guyu Demon Monarch quickly said, young Master Yi, I'll lead the way. Saying that, he quickly walked in front of Yi Xian. As if he thought of something, he said, how can we let young Master Yi walk? Mount Mang suddenly whistled, and the next moment, a huge wolf suddenly leaped out from the distant forest. The huge wolf directly came in front of Yi Xian and slowly knelt down. Mount Mang made an inviting gesture, young Master Yi, please sit. Yi Xian glanced at the huge wolf and smiled, it's fate that we met. I'll give you some good fortune. As he spoke, he placed his right hand on the wolf's body. In the next moment, strands of violet energy surged out from the center of his palm. When the violet energy entered the wolf's body, it instantly felt as if it had been injected with stimulants, and its entire body started trembling violently. Seeing this scene, Mount Mang and Guyu Demon Monarch looked at each other with a trace of shock in their eyes. This was because they discovered that the huge wolf's bloodline was transforming. This was too terrifying. Yi Xian looked at the 2 demon monarchs, it seems to be breaking through. Why don't we walk? Just as Guyu Demon Monarch was about to speak, Mount Mang suddenly said, how can we do that? Absolutely not. Young Master Yi, if you don't mind, ride me. I can do it. With that said, he returned to his true form. Mount Mang's true form was that of a wolf, but he was different from the huge wolf. His entire body was purplish black, and his body was covered in pitch black scales. In terms of aura, he was hundreds of miles ahead of the huge wolf. Wolf Monarch. The true Mount Mang's Wolf Monarch. Seeing this scene, Guyu Demon Monarch was somewhat dumbfounded. Mount Mang's actions had exceeded his expectations. Yi Xian was also slightly taken aback. He did not expect Mount Mang to be willing to ride him. This was a demon monarch. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, "Mount Mang, this isn't too good, right?" Mount Mang hurriedly shook his head. "There's nothing bad about it. Young Master Yi, hurry up and get on. We'll bring you to the first-ranked Sky Demon Monarch." Yi Xian did not refuse. He directly sat on Mount Mang's back and asked, "Mount Mang, is this Sky Demon Monarch the strongest demon monarch in the Great Desolate Mountain Range?" Mount Mang said, "He's the strongest among the demon monarchs, but he's not the strongest in the Great Desolate Mountain Range. The strongest in the Great Desolate Mountain Range is that fierce beast." Yi Xian was somewhat curious. "Fierce beast?" Mount Mang nodded. "That fierce beast isn't a demon beast native to our Great Desolate Mountain Range. It's an outsider. It now lives in the deepest part of the Great Desolate Mountain Range, the Heaven-Earth Mountain Range. It rarely appears, so we don't dare provoke it." Yi Xian asked, "Is it very strong?" Mount Mang said in a deep voice, "Very, very strong. Very strong." Yi Xian looked up into the mountain range's depths, his thoughts unknown. Mount Mang sprinted through the mountain range. His speed could be said to be as fast as lightning, extremely fast. At that moment, Mount Mang entered a mountain range. Just as he entered the mountain range, powerful demon beasts swept over with their spiritual consciousnesses. Mount Mang's eyes flashed with a hint of viciousness. "Young Master Yi is training. Unrelated demon beasts, leave immediately." His voice was like thunder, shaking the mountains. Yi Xian, with demon monarch Mang Mountain's furious roar, the surrounding weaker demon beasts immediately retreated. This was Mount Mang. How could ordinary demon beasts dare to defy them? Furthermore, Mount Mang had demon monarch Guyu with him. 2 demon monarchs were escorting him. Mount Mang transformed into a black beam of light and disappeared into the distance with Yi Xian. Demon monarch Guyu followed closely behind. On the 9th floor of the prison pagoda, the Door of Calamity sat on the ground with a mocking smile. "Is he here to train? He's here to posture, right?" In the mountain range, Mount Mang and demon monarch Guyu led Yi Xian as they sprinted. Beasts retreated wherever they went. About an hour later, demon monarch Mount Mang suddenly stopped. Not far in front of them was a mountain range that stretched on endlessly. Mount Mang said in a deep voice, "Young Master Yi, this is the Sky Demon Mountain Range where the Sky Demon Monarch lives." Sky Demon Monarch. Yi Xian looked up at the mountain range. He could sense an extremely powerful aura in the Sky Demon Mountain Range. Sky Demon Monarch? Yi Xian smiled faintly. He dismounted and walked towards the Sky Demon Mountain Range. At that moment, Demon Monarch Guyu suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, be careful." Yi Xian nodded. At that moment, an invisible pressure suddenly came crushing down from the Sky Demon Mountain Range. Yi Xian stopped in his tracks as the pressure grew stronger. At the same time, a voice sounded from the Sky Demon Mountain Range. "Human?" Yi Xian nodded. The voice said again, "Why are you here?" Yi Xian looked up at the Sky Demon Mountain Range. "I'm begging for death." Demon Monarch Guyu, Mount Mang, you're tuning in to the A Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.